Chapter 434. Originally, they agreed that Tongning could go home that night. But, after Elder Imo made things difficult for her, she had no choice but to ask Song Yinshu to tell Imo Ting the truth about the situation on set. Imo Ting did not interfere with her decisions. He simply knew who was making things difficult for his wife. Just wait and see. This old man had made his wife suffer a lot. When the time came, he was going to get revenge for Tongning. But, right now, it was more important for Elder Imo to understand Tongning. So, he simply instructed Secretary Song Yin to note down every single thing that Tongning had to endure. In fact, she had to remember it clearly. That night, Bai Qiuxing and Tongning had a scene together. Perhaps it was because of Elder Mo's nagging during the day, but when Bai Qiuxing looked at Tongning again, he felt her acting was a little different than before. As she was a model, although Tongning was talented, she lacked experience. Most of the time, she relied on her strengths and avoided her weaknesses. But, at this moment, she had learned to use techniques. The two were currently filming a scene where they brushed past each other. But, in reality, Bai Qiuxing knew Tongning was looking for him. So, when he found out Tongning's identity as a police officer, he had no choice but to leave her side. Seeing the anxiety in Tongning's eyes, Bai Qiuxing was momentarily distracted. In fact, Weiyan noticed it. Cut. Qiuxing, what's wrong? It's nothing, director. Let's do it again. Bai Qiuxing calmed himself down as he once again felt conflicted. He wasn't sure if he should replace Tongning. Elder Imo also came to watch Tongning's scene that night. In the end, he scoffed. Looks like you still have some potential. On the surface, Elder Imo appeared to be in a difficult position. But, in the end, she was still his granddaughter-in-law. He could bully her, but others couldn't. This was a typical Imo family attitude. The next morning, Tongning's face was a little pale. Seeing this, Elder Imo actually went to sleep in. Tongning lay on the table for a while. Then, in the afternoon, she staggered out with Elder Imo to watch other people's scenes. Everyone has their own unique characteristics when they act. Even if it's just a small role, don't overlook their existence. Sometimes, a small role can make the entire film a success, Elder Imo said to the people beside him in a low voice. In reality, he was simply telling Tongning. So, Tongning carefully observed the acting of others and took what she could learn from them for her own use. During a break in filming, Bai Qiuxing lifted his head and glanced at Tongning and Elder Tang. In the end, he decided to give it a try. So, he asked his assistant to contact Elder Tang, and Elder Tang agreed to meet with him that night. This time, Elder Tang did not bring Tongning because she had a scene to film. Inside a private room in the hotel, Elder Fong waved the fan in his hand and asked Bai Qiuxing, "If you have something to say, just say it." Actually, to be honest with you, I want Gu Hong to be the female lead of this film. Since you don't like Tongning, can you replace her? We can discuss the price. Bai Qiuxing asked straightforwardly. The old man's disgust towards Tongning was obvious. The old man glanced at Bai Qiuxing and closed his fan. He then laughed. "Do you think I hate Tongning? At least, you prefer Gu Hong. Who told you that?" Old Master Shang's protectiveness was immediately triggered. "I did say that Gu Hong was stable the other day, but that was because I didn't mention her flaws. I thought you had already learned your lesson from the car racing scene." Bai Qiuxing's expression changed. Because Tongning did not mention it again, he almost forgot about it. But, how did this old man find out? That. Bai Qiuxing tried to explain. "That's enough. The reason why I want Tongning to be my assistant is because I have higher expectations for her. I don't have any expectations for you guys because I don't care about you guys," Elder Tang said in disdain. "Also, if you have bad intentions, God will deal with you sooner or later." After speaking, Elder Tang stood up, but Bai Qiuxing flew into a rage. "Do you think you're so great just because you're one of the investors? If I wasn't great, would you be sitting here right now?" Elder Tang retorted. "Tongning has given you a chance to live, so you should cherish it. If you continue to play dirty tricks, even God won't be able to protect you." After speaking, Elder Tang turned around and left in a domineering manner. Bai Qiuxing was left trembling in fear. He wanted to know what this old man's identity was. He dared to look down on everyone. That night, after Bai Qiuxing returned home, he had no appetite to eat. In the end, He gave his assistant a phone call and gave him a few instructions. So, the next morning, the crew began to receive phone calls from the media claiming that Tongning was being bullied on set by an investor. The media kept calling to verify the matter, but Wei-Yin could only dismiss them with an excuse. But the film crew couldn't stand up to all sorts of rumors. For example, Tongning had been following an old man around and was even seen washing his clothes and cooking for him. This time, the rumors turned into a bloodbath. In fact, there were even rumors that Mo Ting was afraid that his marriage with Tongning would change. When Elder Tang saw the news, he sat down with Wei-Yin and scoffed. This Bai Qiuxing sure doesn't learn his lesson. Bai Qiuxing's move was quite ruthless. If he did this, the media would assume that Tongning was the one that released the rumors. She wanted Bai Qiuxing and Wei-Yin to fight while Bai Qiuxing reaped the benefits. Elder Mo, what do you think of this matter? This person can't be allowed to live, Elder Mo said as he waved his fan. Why don't you reveal your identity? There's no rush. Elder Mo tried to stop him. We need to wait until he's done with his tricks before we give him a slap in the face. Getting rid of him now would be too easy on him. Also, hurry and find someone to replace him. A person can have their own personality, but they can't have any bad intentions. Okay, I understand, Wei-Yin replied. Even if Elder Mo didn't say anything, he would have done the same. Because if the film was a success, but the male lead had a bad character, wouldn't that leave a stain on his reputation? Of course, he wouldn't allow this to happen. Originally, he thought that if Bai Qiuxing stopped, he would be given a chance. But who would have thought the desire in his heart would suddenly reignite? So, they couldn't be blamed. Actually, the rascal's acting isn't too bad. Elder Mo suddenly mentioned, if he didn't have to take over Hairue, he would have been a top actor. Does President Mo know how to act? Wei-Yin was suddenly interested. There's nothing he doesn't know how to do. This was something that Elder Nangong had always been proud of. Chapter 435. In that case, why don't you go back and manage Hairue for a few months? Why don't we let President Mo act? Wei-Yin suggested. In your dreams. Elder Mo scoffed. Was he joking? It wasn't easy for him to get rid of his burden. How could he take it back now? Don't even think about it. Hairue needs a Mo Ting to manage. I can't think straight anymore. All I can do is act. Wei-Yin smiled and did not say another word. Elder Mo had indeed slacked off, but it couldn't be denied that he had single-handedly built up his empire. Those few years in Beijing were glorious. However, after so many years of playing with his grandson, he had long lost the ambition he once had. But when it came to brains, no one could compare to him. Does that mean you approve of Tongning as your granddaughter-in-law? Approve of what? She hasn't even shown her true abilities. Elder Mo waved the fan in his hand. Let's see how she performs. Wei-Yin looked at Elder Mo helplessly. This old man was stubborn on the outside, but soft on the inside. He had already protected Tongning so well, yet he still refused to admit it. However, the matter of replacing Tongning needed to be handled immediately. Who is this dirty old man? Why is Tongning following behind him? Are the rumors true or false? What about Mo Ting? If they break up, I will never believe in the entertainment industry and love again. The entertainment industry is filthy. What kind of plot doesn't exist? Is Tongning about to go down the wrong path? Tongning shouldn't go out and do whatever she wants. What do you think of President Mo? Oh, I don't believe you. Is that old man really an investor in the film? Why is Tongning washing his clothes and cooking for him? What kind of plot is this? I'm really worried about President Mo's feelings. Does he know about this? The public was in a frenzy as news about Tongning on set spread like wildfire. Of course, the public's desire to know the truth was also strong. They wanted to know if Tongning was really taking things too hard and abandoning herself. She had such an outstanding husband, yet she chose to serve the old man. Plenty of media outlets made phone calls to Hairue. However, the Public Relations Department righteously told the public that it was just malicious slander and that the rumors were false. Of course, Mo Ting also saw the news as soon as it was released. His expression was equally gloomy, but it wasn't because he believed the news. Instead, It was because the old man actually tortured his wife so badly. He had always doted on Tongning, so he tried his best not to let her do any housework. Yet, this old man made her do his laundry and cook for him. Why? His men? Did he agree? President Lu Che couldn't understand Imo Ting's emotions. Was he angry? But that shouldn't be the case. This incident had nothing to do with Tongning. Forget it. I'll endure it for now. Imo Ting turned off his computer and suppressed the anger in his heart. How are we going to deal with this? What did Wei say? Imo Ting lifted his head and asked Lu Che. It was obvious that someone had purposely leaked the news. As for who that person was, there was a tacit understanding. Director Wei has asked Hai Rue to recommend a suitable candidate. Director Wei will hold a secret audition and replace Bai Qiuxing at the right time. As there aren't many martial artists in the country and even fewer famous ones, Director Wei won't be able to find a suitable candidate in a short amount of time, Lu Che explained. In reality, Lu Che also wanted to say that Director Wei's choice was none other than Imo Ting, the CEO. But, of course, he didn't have the guts. Does the old man have a candidate in mind? No, Lu Che shook his head. Elder Imo isn't too interested in the male lead. As long as it didn't interfere with his acting and training Tongning, he was fine with it. Make a phone call to Bai Chendong, but the madam has just worked with Bai Chendong. If we were to work together again, wouldn't the audience get sick of it? Lu Che was a little worried. After all, the two had already worked together on WH. In that case, contact an actor from overseas, and we'll work together internationally. In a moment, I'll write down a few names for you to show to Wei. After he makes his choice, contact them and check their schedules. The main reason why Imo Ting made this decision was because he wanted to pave the way for Tongning to enter the international stage. In reality, there was no lack of good martial artists in the country, but their acting was too weak. If they could hire a big name from overseas, it would be able to bring out Tongning's potential. After all, foreign actors always worked hard when it came to acting. Bai Qiuxing had no idea that the entire production crew was already preparing to replace him. From the moment he decided to take revenge, he already had a feeling that the people he offended weren't people he could afford to offend. That night, Tongning prepared dinner for Elder Imo originally. She wanted to head to the set to film her scenes, but Elder Imo waved his fan and said, "Don't waste your energy. In 2 days, you will see Bai Qiuxing leave." Tongning furrowed her brows and turned around to look at Elder Imo. "Don't tell me you don't know who started the rumors," Elder Tang said as he picked up his bowl and chopsticks, hiding his satisfied smile as he looked down at Tongning. "Does Director Wei plan to replace Bai Qiuxing? What's the point of keeping a black sheep like him?" Elder Imo scoffed. "If he doesn't have the ability, then he would have to endure it. But, since he has the ability, he has the responsibility to maintain the good atmosphere in the entertainment industry. As for those with bad intentions, he will ban them every time he sees them. This is the courage of the Imo family." Huh. Elder Imo was stunned. Oh no, he almost let the cat out of the bag. "It's nothing. In the next few days, you can continue filming, but don't stay up too late. Who are you trying to impress with a pale face when you arrive in the morning?" Elder Imo expressed his dissatisfaction. Tongning nodded her head obediently. Okay. In reality, Elder Imo was indirectly reminding her that he was going to replace her in the next few days. He was telling her not to be too serious and to take some time to rest and prepare for the real male lead. How could a smart person like Tongning not understand what he was trying to say? So, as she left, she had a smile on her face. Although the old man was indeed a little annoying, he was doing it for her own good. He wanted to suppress her arrogance a little. After all, the success of Stupid made her forget that she was still a newcomer. So, the timing of the old man's appearance was perfect. On the way back to the hotel, Tongning bumped into Gu Hong. Their eyes met awkwardly, but Tongning said calmly, "He still won't let go. I'm sorry. Since he has made a move, I will definitely stand on his side. After all, he is doing this for me," Gu Hong replied. "I will gather my fans to start a boycott." "Tongning, let me give you a reminder. After all, you have always been a good wife to Imo Ting. But this time, in the eyes of your fans, you have done something humiliating." Chapter 436. This matter isn't up to you guys to decide, Tongning said with a smile. There was no trace of panic or anger in her eyes. This made Gu Hong extremely confused. How is it that no matter what happens, you can always be so calm? Why don't you tell me? That's because I know evil people won't succeed. Tongning smiled confidently. At least in my world, no one has ever succeeded in doing something evil. Gu Hong couldn't see through Tongning, but she knew that Tongning had already seen through her. When it came to intelligence, it was likely that even in her next life, she wouldn't be able to surpass Tongning. She refused to believe that Tongning would be able to overcome any difficulties. Everyone was bound to have bad luck one day. I know what Xiaoxing is doing isn't good for either of us, but I will do whatever it takes to protect him. After speaking, Gu Hong disappeared from Tongning's sight. Tongning did not look back as she returned to her room. From the looks of it, Gu Hong had no idea that the production was planning to replace by Xiaoxing. Tongning wondered, what was the point of fighting over and over, only to end up empty-handed? That night, Long Jie gave Tongning a phone call to check on the situation. What happened this time? What's wrong with that old man? You are such a troublemaker. Every time something goes wrong, you end up on the hottest search rankings. Someone did it on purpose. Tongning explained helplessly as she explained the situation on set to Long Jie. As soon as Long Jie found out, she was furious. What kind of luck is this? The male lead and supporting actress are a couple, so of course they want to chase you away. Why don't you think about who will benefit the most from your departure? Long Jie sighed. But I'm already used to you encountering obstacles in everything you do. If nothing goes wrong, you wouldn't be called Tongning. What did the director say about this? They've decided to replace him, Tongning replied. Replace you? Replaced by Xiaoxing. Tongning couldn't stand Long Jie's screams and giggled. That's good. Long Jie let out a sigh of relief. If I wasn't preparing for pregnancy, I would follow you around every day. What kind of assistant did boss find for you? He doesn't seem to be taking his work seriously. Be a good girl and prepare for pregnancy. Don't worry about me. Since there's no problem, of course I'm not worried. It's just that the rumors about you and boss are spreading like wildfire. They keep saying that you guys are going to divorce. I'm getting angry. Tongning understood that Long Jie truly cared about her, so she allowed her to nag for quite some time before hanging up the phone. Finally, Imo Ting called. The first thing he asked was, who were you on the phone with for so long? I couldn't get in. What do you think? Tongning asked in a coquettish tone. Long man, I'm just teasing you. The incident was originally suppressed, but Bai Xiaoxing stepped out and said a few words, causing the situation to escalate. I'm mentally prepared. Hubby, if it wasn't for the fact that Bai Xiaoxing's heart isn't in the right place, I actually have high hopes for his relationship with Gu Hong. Gu Hong is willing to give up everything for Bai Xiaoxing. I can sense the helplessness in her heart. I'm not optimistic about anything. I just want to kill the person who bullied you. Imo Ting replied in seriousness. Wei-Yan knows how to handle this matter. You don't need to make an appearance. Hai Rui will handle the PR. If Bai Xiaoxing wanted to cause a scene, then let him. Faced with the media's interview, Bai Xiaoxing straightforwardly explained that he wasn't sure why Elder He kept targeting Tongning. Plus, Tongning only followed him because she wanted him to act with her. As for everything else, he had no idea. His explanation further hinted that Old He had slept with Tongning. The entertainment industry was a place where people made groundless accusations. Bai Xiaoxing simply said a few words, but the media was already able to make a lot of assumptions. Tongning has been found to have slept with Tongning. Fellow actors prove Tongning has slept with Tongning. What will happen to Imo Tang's relationship? Rumor has it that Imo Tang's marriage changed. Imo Tang hasn't stepped out of his office since. Faced with the increasing pressure from the media, Hai Rui no longer tried to suppress them. Instead, they directly warned Bai Xiaoxing, as an actor, you must first learn to be an honest person. This was Hai Rui hinting that Bai Xiaoxing was lying. In an instant, it was hard for the public to differentiate between the truth and lies. However, Imo Ting and Elder Imo were not in a rush. Bai Xiaoxing's current actions were not enough for the production to replace him. So, they waited to see what other tricks Bai Xiaoxing had up his sleeve. After all, Face-slapping incidents like this were only enjoyable when they reached the climax. Logically speaking, with the crew in a mess, Wei-in should be worried about PR. After all, sleeping with someone was harmful to the film. But Wei-in remained calm and claimed to be sick. He told his assistant director to film some unimportant scenes to give everyone some time to recover. In reality, he had already gone to the US to meet with the actor that Immerse had found. As soon as the actor heard that Wei-in was involved in the film and was willing to open up the Asian market, they arranged to meet in person. Wei-in thought to himself, this time, he had profited from his misfortune. But there were some people that were a little worse off. How dare they spread news about Elderemo translator? Uni editor. Uni, what kind of expression would Bai Qiuxing have when Elderemo revealed his identity? Just thinking about it made her feel good. Because of Immerse's calmness, Tongning's mood was not affected in the slightest. She continued to take care of Elderemo and learn from him. Song Yinshu tried to persuade Tongning to avoid arousing suspicion, but Tongning shook her head. He's innocent to begin with. If I keep hiding, it will only make things worse. Plus, what's there to be afraid of? She had the entire production and Immerse backing her up. If Bai Qiuxing was allowed to get his way, not only Immerse, even Wei-in would feel humiliated. Okay, your fans have also expressed their stance. They will believe whatever you say. Tongning smiled and nodded. Tongning smiled and nodded her head. It seemed her fans had developed a diamond heart. They knew that unless she personally admitted to something, they wouldn't believe it easily. Tell them to calm down. The truth will eventually come out. Okay. Seeing Tongning's confidence, Song Yinshu no longer had any reason to worry. So, she simply relayed Tongning's message to her fans. As soon as the fans heard about Tongning's message, they were relieved. Although she was constantly arguing with people, the pride and joy that Tongning brought to them was multiplied. They all knew how good Tongning was. So, even if the public were to spread it all over the place, they still wouldn't believe it. Who told their idol to take an unusual path? They sat back and waited for Bai Qiuxing to be taught a lesson. Of course, Bai Qiuxing didn't have such a simple trick up his sleeve. To be able to achieve such a status in the entertainment industry, he naturally had his own strengths. Chapter 437. At the same time that Tongning was rumored to have slept with Immerse, her phone number was also leaked. An unscrupulous reporter received the news and gave Tongning a phone call. Are you Tongning? Really? That's impossible, right? At first, Tongning was able to put up a good fight. But, as the media confirmed that the number was hers, her phone rang non-stop for the entire day. Ningjia, the man with the surname Bai, is getting more and more out of hand. Song Yinshu no longer wanted to call Bai Qiuxing by his full name. She simply called him by his surname. Originally, she didn't have any feelings for him, but now, she was extremely angry. Tongning looked at her phone with a gloomy expression. Not long after, Immerse arrived at the hotel. At this time, the media were already calling Tongning. Immerse looked at it and picked it up. Is Tongning? Tell me, is there such a thing as unspoken rules? Which company are you from? Immerse asked without hesitation. I am from Huaming Media Company, Limited. The person on the other end of the phone did not seem to realize who was on the other end of the phone. He simply thought it was one of Tongning's staff that wanted to share some big news with him. But, to his surprise, Immerse did not even bat an eye as he directly said, Miss Mississippi, wait for the door to close. After speaking, he hung up the phone and gestured for Song Yinshu to leave. I'm fine. Tongning looked at Immerse and held onto his warm hand. I know you guys have a plan. So, all I need to do is wait. I've asked Lu Che to change your phone number. After speaking, Immerse knew Tongning was being sentimental, so he added, keep this number for now. Next time, if the media doesn't bother you, you can use it again. Tongning understood that Immerse understood her, so she simply smiled and did not respond. Plus, if you want to do something, go ahead and do it. Don't worry about others. Wei-in's plan won't affect you. Immerse encouraged Tongning. As long as Tongning was happy, he was willing to break any taboos and ignore any plans. As long as Tongning could vent her anger. Okay, I understand. Tongning nodded, acknowledging Immerse's support. Ting's heart ached as he pulled Tongning into his embrace and gently stroked her hair. That's why. I need to put you on the highest pedestal. Only then will others be left in the dust and no longer have any ideas about you. Tongning understood Ting's intentions, so she hugged him even tighter. I only need to know that we are an invincible husband and wife at all times. Of course. After checking on Tongning, Ting left the hotel and turned to Lu Che. Huaming Media Company, Limited tomorrow. I want to see the news of their closure. Also, where does the old man live? I'll take you there. Lu Che immediately led the way. Ting followed Lu Che into Elder Mo's courtyard with a dark and handsome face. As long as Bai Qiuxing made his next move, he would be able to close the net. Plus, the overseas actor had already been confirmed. He would arrive in Beijing in 3 days at the latest. In other words, there was plenty of time. I really don't want to reveal my identity. I haven't had enough fun yet. In that case, even if you don't reveal it, I can still deal with the jerk, Wei Yan laughed. No, the rascal just gave me a warning. If I play any more tricks, I may be slapped to death on the beach. I better take it easy, Elder Mo grumbled. No matter what, Ting was currently in charge of Hai Rui. So, he still had to take into consideration Ting's identity and give him some face. Is Elder Mo afraid of President Mo? A new ruler brings his own subordinates. Right now, it's his world. All I care about is eating, drinking, and having fun. It's best if I don't get rebuffed. Otherwise, I'll have to face the consequences. That wouldn't be worth it, Elder Mo calculated carefully. Chapter 438. Everyone was anticipating Bai Qiuxing's final move. But, for the next 2 days, he did not make a move. Although he still expressed his dissatisfaction towards the production, he did not take a hard stance. Because of Hai Rui's PR, the production returned to normal. Although Tongning was harassed to a certain extent, after changing her phone number, everything returned to normal. This was all thanks to Ting's strength. Bai Qiuxing also understood that if he didn't make a move soon, this incident would soon be covered up by Hai Rui. That day, Tongning was filming at night. While she was waiting for her scenes to start, someone from the production team came to visit. The person claimed to be Bai Qiuxing's friend and asked where he was. Tongning casually pointed to a direction and told the person that Bai Qiuxing was currently filming an action scene. The person nodded his head gratefully and quickly disappeared from Tongning's sight. Tongning had a feeling something wasn't right, but she couldn't put her finger on it. After Song Yinshu returned to her side, Tongning whispered something into her ear and Song Yinshu cautiously left. Although Tongning couldn't guess, she had a feeling that someone would come to visit at a time like this. Of course, she couldn't directly grab the person and interrogate them, so she had to be careful. Otherwise, she would be making a mountain out of a molehill. However, because of a simple conversation with a stranger, the landmine that Bai Qiuxing had planted a long time ago was triggered. 1 a.m., a huge piece of news once again exploded in the entertainment industry. Actor Bai Qiuxing had been attacked and was currently lying unconscious in the hospital. As soon as the crew of The Disappeared received news, Wei Yan immediately rushed to the hospital. Meanwhile, Bai Qiuxing's agency immediately blocked the news. What's going on? By the time Wei Yan arrived at the hospital, Bai Qiuxing's manager was sitting on a bench covered in blood. From the looks of it, he had indeed been through a tough fight. Director Wei, when I took Qiuxing home that night, someone ambushed him. Originally, with Qiuxing's skills, he would have been able to escape. But, because he was trying to protect me, he was stabbed and sent to the emergency room. This is the phone that the assailant threw away. Tongning's phone number is stored inside. The manager handed the bloodied phone to Wei and furrowed his brows and immediately realized what was going on. It turned out, Bai Qiuxing's so-called help was actually a self-scripted and self-directed act. He didn't hesitate to get himself injured. It could be seen how scheming he was. A car accident wouldn't scare him. I will get to the bottom of this matter, Wei Yan said to Bai Qiuxing's manager. But before that, don't tell the media. After all, it won't do Qiuxing any good. I understand, Director Wei. I feel wronged on behalf of Qiuxing. We merely spoke the truth, but we didn't want to be attacked. Does the Mo family have the final say in the entertainment industry? Is there no law? Wei suppressed his disgust towards Bai Qiuxing and pretended to pat his manager on the shoulder. Don't worry, I will get justice for him. I hope that's the case. Otherwise, our agency will not let Hai Rui off. After comforting Bai Qiuxing's manager, Wei instructed the assistant director and 2 members of the production crew to watch over Bai Qiuxing's every move. Afterwards, Wei contacted Mo Ting and told him that Bai Qiuxing was about to slander Tongning, so he could be mentally prepared. He also told Mo Ting about Bai Qiuxing's plan to frame Mo Ting. If he really dares to harm himself and put on an act, then I will respect him for being a man. Elder Mo sneered as he waved his fan. Elder Mo waved his fan and scoffed. I never expected Bai Qiuxing to be so unscrupulous. Since he wants to frame Tongning, he can't simply rely on the phone number. That can't be used as evidence. He must have other evidence. Last night, Tongning gave directions to a strange man. That man claimed to be a good friend of Bai Qiuxing and came to visit on set. At that time, Tongning asked her assistant to follow the man and take a photo. I've already asked Lu Che to investigate further. If this man really has something to do with Tongning, then finding him would be equivalent to finding Bai Qiuxing's lifeline, Mo Ting said with a hint of danger. Tongning has always been cautious. I'm not surprised that she noticed. Wei nodded his head in agreement. Now, the key point lies with this man. Bai Qiuxing is indeed talented, but he is too calculative. Looking at the entire situation now, I can't help but feel a chill down my spine. Luckily, Tongning is careful with every step. Otherwise, she would have been killed by this man without even knowing it. It's all my fault for not being able to see through him. Wei looked at the 2 men and sighed guiltily. Is Tongning okay? She's asleep. She's already used to it. Mo Ting laughed. If he hadn't coaxed his wife to sleep, he wouldn't have come out today. That's good. I was worried that she would be affected by something. But, from the looks of it, Tongning must have prepared herself last night. I can't help but admire her calmness. Wei let out a long sigh. It was rare to see an actress like Tongning, or rather, a woman. On the surface, she appeared gentle and weak. But the things she did were always amazing. She was serious, hardworking, and had no intention of harming others. Was this the reason why Mo Ting doted on her? No matter what, we will definitely find out tomorrow. Mo Ting was 100% confident in Lu Che's ability to track down information. I'm sure Bai Qiuxing won't be sitting around doing nothing. Let's just wait and see. There will be a good show tomorrow. Elder Mo sat to one side and listened to the conversation between the 2 men. To be honest, all the scheming and deceit between the 2 men was irritating to his ears. What he hated the most was the scheming in the entertainment industry. This was the reason why he had abandoned his responsibilities early on. Instead, he spent all his time thinking about framing others. If he didn't train himself, how could his acting improve? How could he possibly win an award? Because of this, he liked Tongning's coldness from the bottom of his heart. She was indeed not a kind person, but she never took the initiative to harm others. This was proof that she had a bottom line. If Tongning could do something that he liked, it would be perfect. Soon, the night passed and dawn arrived. However, news of Bai Qiuxing's injury spread like wildfire. Needless to say, Bai Qiuxing was definitely going to spread the news. He wanted everyone to see his wound, and the person that caused it was Tongning. Although Bai Qiuxing's agency did not explicitly say that Tongning had anything to do with the incident, they still revealed that they had found Tongning's phone number on the culprit's phone. This was equivalent to telling everyone that Tongning was the mastermind. We will report this incident to the police and let them investigate further. I'm sure we will have an answer very soon. Thank you for your concern. As soon as Qiuxing wakes up, we will let everyone know about his condition. Don't worry. Chapter 439. Bai Qiuxing was determined to push Tongning into the heart of the matter. So, as soon as he woke up, he immediately went to see the police and reporters. He appeared to be seriously injured. His head was wrapped in a thick bandage, and his face was pale and skinny. His eyes were bloodshot. The culprit wanted to kill me. This time, I hope the police can find out the truth and give me justice. Punish the culprit. Okay, Qiuxing's condition isn't too good, so he won't be accepting any interviews today. As for the details of the attack, He will hold a press conference when his body is able to handle it. When the time comes, he will reveal everything to the public. I hope the media can understand his current condition. Bai Qiuxing's manager chased the media out of the room, leaving only the police officers behind to record his statement. Not long after, the police left and immediately arrived at Hairue to summon Tongning for questioning. As soon as this news was released, the entire entertainment industry was in an uproar. Was Tongning really the culprit behind Bai Qiuxing's attack? If not, why did the police directly summon Tongning instead of looking for someone else? To avoid causing a commotion, the police did not make their move during the day. Of course, the police had already shown their identification, so Tongning had no choice but to cooperate. Emoting arranged a meeting room for the police to use, and Tongning immediately rushed over from her home. Of course, Emoting wasn't someone to be trifled with. There were already 3 lawyers following Tongning into the meeting room. Everything will be fine. Relax, Emoting comforted as he patted Tongning on the shoulder. I know, Tongning nodded her head, but she still had to follow legal procedures. This was something that no one could escape from. Emoting gently stroked Tongning's hair as he gestured for her to bring the lawyers into the meeting room. After she sat down, the police began to ask their questions. Miss Tang, let me show you a video first. It was recorded on set, the police officer said as he pulled out his phone and placed it in front of Tongning. As soon as Tongning glanced at the video, she smiled. This man claimed to be Bai Qiuxing's friend and asked me for directions. So, I told him that Bai Qiuxing was filming a fight scene and told him which set he was on. The police officer took back the video and continued to ask, in that case, how do you explain the fact that the culprit that attacked Bai Qiuxing had your phone number on his phone? Mr. Policeman, how do you want me to answer this question? Tongning asked calmly. My phone number has been leaked and everyone knows about it. Why are you asking me how he managed to get my number? As it turns out, the person that asked you for directions was the same person that attacked Bai Qiuxing. We are currently searching for their whereabouts. Once these people are captured, the truth will come to light. The police obviously knew they wouldn't get an answer from Tongning because they didn't have enough evidence. Although Tongning was the biggest suspect, they couldn't do anything to her. We will not tolerate any criminal activity. The police officer's words seemed to have a deeper meaning. Tongning replied in a serious tone, I hope you remember what you said today. Let's go. After the interrogation, the police got up to leave. However, just as he took a step forward, he turned around again. Now that things have gotten out of hand, you should be in more trouble. Be careful. I naturally have a way to prove my innocence. Thank you for your concern. Tongning smiled elegantly. The 2 police officers were stunned for a moment before they walked out of Hairue. However, Tongning's expression was no longer as relaxed and natural as before. Back when she was dealing with Yu Shanshan, it was a self-scripted and self-directed incident. At that time, she could remain silent and stay out of it. But now, Bai Qiuxing's act had completely dragged her into a whirlpool of emotions that she couldn't pull herself out of. Afterwards, Emoting entered the meeting room and held onto Tongning's hands tightly. Lu Che has already received a lead. He will definitely find Bai Qiuxing before the police. Why aren't you cooperating with the police? I need to personally obtain evidence of your innocence before I hand it over to the police. He was used to being in control. Since Bai Qiuxing was holding a press conference to announce the incident, he naturally had to prepare a good show for him. Trust in Lu Che. Nothing will go wrong. Tongning nodded her head. Of course, I know you won't let me be wrongly accused. In fact, I'm more worried about you. I don't care too much about what the public says because I know the truth will eventually come out. Your heart is already strong enough. Emoting hugged her. His eyes were filled with heartache and relief. Afterwards, the couple returned to his office. While Mo Ting handled his work, Tongning accompanied him by his side. Actually, for Tongning, no difficulty could overwhelm her, as long as the man beside her continued to love her. In order to retaliate against Bai Qiuxing, not only did she need to find the key man, she also needed to find out why Bai Qiuxing did what he did. That was, to prove his relationship with Gu Hong. Tongning still did not know Elder Mo's identity. So, she had no idea that there was a trap within a trap within a trap within a trap that Wei Yan had planned. The public did not have much information about Gu Hong and Bai Qiusheng, so very few people knew about their relationship. Thinking of this, Tang Ning's eyes darkened. She then said to Imo Ting, I want to ask Bai Chendong to help me put on a show. I need evidence to prove Bai Qiusheng and Gu Heng's relationship. What do you want to do? Imo Ting smiled. This method may work. Tang Ning looked at Mo Ting. Perhaps it was a family trait, but Bai Chendong's ability to imitate was also outstanding. So, Imo Ting found a lot of audio recordings of Bai Qiusheng and handed them to Bai Chendong for him to imitate. Of course, although Bai Chendong didn't want to get involved in a matter like this, he couldn't do anything about the fact that his own family was being bullied. With the addition of Han Xiner's encouragement, Bai Chendong spent some time imitating Bai Qiusheng's voice until it was 80 to 90% similar before he picked up his phone and gave Gu Hong a phone call. At first, Gu Hong did not pick up, but after Bai Chendong sent her a message, she finally picked up. I'm Gu Hong. It's me. Bai Chendong imitated Bai Qiusheng perfectly. Gu Hao heaved a sigh of relief when she heard a familiar voice. She grumbled, Why are you calling me at this time? Didn't we agree not to contact each other for the time being? There are some things that I need to see you about. We can't go home. We can only go outside. Let's go to our usual haunts. All right, wait for me. Don't call me. I don't want to alert the media. Okay. Gu Hong was extremely obedient. Bai Chendong hung up the phone and threw it to one side. He then looked at Han Xiner and Tang Ning proudly, like he was telling them not to bother him with small matters like this again. It was a waste of time. Han Xiner pretended to bite him while Tang Ning looked out the window gloomily. She could only hope that the person following Gu Hong would find something. Chapter 440. It wasn't that Gu Hong wasn't prepared, but during this period of time, she had been extremely nervous because of Bai Qiusheng. So, she couldn't tell whether Bai Qiusheng was telling the truth or lying. So, he simply told her after the incident, after a few more days, things will settle down. When that time comes, you will be the female lead. Now that things had gotten to this point, Gu Hong no longer had any feelings for the female lead. She was afraid that Bai Qiusheng would be exposed. But Bai Qiusheng refused to tell her anything. He simply told her to wait and told her to never admit to her relationship with him. Because Gu Hong didn't know the truth, she took the bait when Bai Chendong lied to her. She had no idea what Bai Qiusheng was up to. Gu Hong left home late at night without her assistant. She drove all by herself to the place where she was supposed to meet Bai Qiusheng. It was an underground cafe. But when she arrived, Bai Qiusheng was nowhere to be seen. In the end, she received a phone call from Bai Chendong. I've been discovered by my manager. I can't leave right now. Go home first. I'll see you later. Gu Hong trusted this voice without a doubt. So, she hurried home without even noticing that someone was following behind her. She was in too much of a panic. Those that were sent out by Imo Ting were definitely reliable people. So, it didn't take long before he managed to gather a lot of information from the cafe. On top of that, he also managed to get his hands on Gu Hong and Bai Qiusheng's hotel records. He also managed to collect photos taken by the hotel staff that saw them. The hotel was indeed secretive, and they did a good job of keeping it a secret. But in the end, they couldn't resist a bribe. After all, the hotel manager had no idea who leaked the photos. At the same time, Lu Che also received news. Although the culprit had escaped once again, he had found an important lead and was confident that he would be able to catch the culprit within 2 days. With evidence in hand, Tang Ning let out a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, Han Xiner looked at her in admiration. Ning Jie is indeed smart. Why don't you say that my acting is good? Bai Chendong scoffed as he turned to look at Han Xiner. Now, I can only hope that Lu Che will do his best. I hope he doesn't make any mistakes. Han Xiner placed her palms together and bowed sincerely to the sky. Bai Chendong had no choice but to stand up and drag Han Xiner out. Since there's nothing else for me to do, I'm going to leave. I have a lot of flowers and plants at home, so I can't be gone for too long. This was Han Xiner's latest method to cure Bai Chendong's laziness. She had 5 cats, 5 dogs, 5 parrots, 5 turtles, and a bunch of flowers and plants at home. However, Bai Chendong actually fell for her tricks. Apart from filming, he spent all his time at home cultivating. Don't worry, nothing will happen. After all, Wei-Yan was also making preparations. The old man was still waiting to deal Bai Qiuxing a fatal blow. Actually, it wasn't difficult to sort out the entire incident. Even though Bai Qiuxing controlled the public opinion, they had more evidence in their hands. Perhaps, Bai Qiuxing was afraid that the longer the investigation dragged on, the more likely Tongning would find evidence to prove her innocence. So, on the third morning after waking up, he announced that he would be holding a press conference. As the incident this time was extremely bad and concerned Tongning and Hai Rui's reputation, the media practically turned out in full force. They all turned up at the press conference prepared by Bai Qiuxing's agency, Hall 5 of a certain five-star hotel. As for Bai Qiuxing, he didn't need to prepare much. All he had to do was sit in his wheelchair and place it on the steps. This scene was enough for the reporters to come up with different headlines. Bai Qiuxing's manager held onto the microphone and thanked the media. He then said in a serious tone, regarding the attack on Qiuxing, "When we found out the truth, we were heartbroken. Of course, the police are still investigating, so I can't jump to conclusions. So, I'll let Qiuxing describe his experience in detail." After speaking, the manager handed the microphone to the wheelchair-bound Bai Qiuxing. Bai Qiuxing was wearing a hospital gown, and his head was wrapped in bandages. His head was initially lowered, but after receiving the microphone, he finally lifted his head and faced the countless cameras and flashes. "I feel a little strange. I don't even know what I did wrong to receive such a painful attack. That night, my manager sent me home to get some rest. But a group of men were waiting outside my house with axes, metal bars, and other tools. I used to be a stunt double, so I'm quite skilled. But they actually attacked my manager. I had no choice but to take the hit for my manager. Afterwards, I lost consciousness. However, my manager managed to grab hold of the man's phone while they were fighting. The police haven't announced their conclusion yet, so I can't say for sure. But Tongning's phone number is in the man's phone. And, according to the police's investigation, the man that attacked me also had a conversation with Tongning. I really don't want to. I don't want to associate such a vicious thing with a woman, but who's going to sympathize with my experience?" After speaking, Bai Qiuxing paused for a moment, clearly choking on his emotions. His manager quickly tried to calm him down before adding, "I hope the police's conclusion has nothing to do with Tongning. Otherwise, I will definitely take legal action and fight Hai Rui to the end." As the big boss of the entertainment industry, Hai Rui has an unshakable position in the industry. If this incident was really caused by Tongning, then Chapter 441. Now that the incident has gotten so big, Hai Rui can't possibly protect Tongning anymore, right? If they were to protect her, it would be too unreasonable. Just because they have power and influence, they can step all over others. This time, they've involved unspoken rules and paid a hitman to hit someone. Let's see what Tongning has to say. I have to hand it to Tongning. No matter where she goes, she won't be able to stop her methods. If we kick Tongning out of the industry, I'm sure no one will object, right? Exactly, Tongning. Get out. Get out. Inside the banquet hall, all sorts of discussions could be heard. Most of the reporters were filled with anger towards Tongning as they promised to get justice for Bai Qiuxing. Justice? Bai Qiuxing looked at the crowd's reaction and hid the anger in his eyes. When no one was looking, the corners of his lips curved upwards. There was no truth to this incident. The truth was that Tongning paid a hitman to hit someone. Faced with the flashing cameras, Bai Qiuxing's manager and Bai Qiuxing looked at each other with a tacit understanding. However, just as everyone was about to head back to work on their big news, the door to Ballroom 5 suddenly swung open. Everyone turned their heads and saw Tongning appear at the entrance of the banquet hall. She was wearing a light blue rippling dress. Oh God, Tongning's here. How dare Tongning show up here? Tongning. All of a sudden, the reporters swarmed over and pushed the topic in front of Tongning, completely surrounding her. Tongning, are you here to clarify things? Tongning, say a few words. Tongning. Tongning smiled confidently at the reporters and said, "You've all been listening to Bai Qiuxing for quite some time. Shouldn't you all hear what I have to say? As soon as the media heard Tongning's words, they immediately understood her intentions and became even more excited. They knew Tongning was going to make this incident full of twists and turns, so the resulting news would be even more exciting. Reporters, please take a seat. Although this is Bai Qiuxing's press conference, since it involves me, then I have a reason to stand out and say a few words. I can't just remain silent and do nothing, right? In order to get more exciting news, the reporters all returned to their seats, and they already had the attitude of watching a good show. Bai Qiuxing and his manager looked at each other again, reminding each other to act according to the situation. After all, Tongning had never been easy to deal with. Tongning walked to the front of the stage with a slight smile on her face. She first bowed to everyone before lifting her head to face the media. I actually have a few questions I want to ask Mr. Bai Qiuxing. Tongning, what other tricks do you have up your sleeve? Haven't you harmed me enough? Bai Qiuxing angrily berated. You said that I hired a hitman because of two things. First, my name is in the hitman's phone, and second, I've spoken to him before. Now, let me tell you the truth. First, my phone number has been leaked. I think everyone here should have my number in their phones, right? Quite a few of them even fought it before. As soon as everyone heard Tongning's words, their expressions turned a little awkward, especially those that had harassed Tongning multiple times. Second, the man that day simply asked me for directions. He said he was your friend and was visiting you. I simply gave him directions. How did I become someone that hired a hitman to hurt you? Who do you think will believe a story that you made up? Bai Qiuxing asked as he lifted his chin. However, Tongning was not in a rush. She continued, in that case, what evidence do you have to prove that Bai Qiuxing didn't make this up? Is it simply because he was injured? After hearing this, the reporters below the stage suddenly sneered. According to what you're saying, Bai Qiuxing wrote and directed this show himself? Would someone hire someone to beat themselves up? Bai Qiuxing has no evidence either, so he's just going around spouting nonsense, Tongning calmly said as she controlled the situation. He has no feud with you. Why would he try to frame you? If you want to push the blame away, you should at least find a better excuse. No feud? Tongning looked down at the crowd and repeated these words. She then scoffed. Who told you that I have no feud with him? In that case, what feud do you have with him? Tell us. The reporters yelled at Tongning. Tongning calmed herself down and lifted her head. Firstly, not too long ago, we were filming a car racing scene, but my car was tampered with. That day, if I hadn't discovered it early, perhaps I would be lying in the hospital right now. Everyone on set can testify to that. Secondly, Lao He appeared in the crew. He didn't like my style, so I took care of the old man's life with the attitude of learning. I wanted to ask for his cooperation, but I was used by some people. They said that I was sleeping with an investor and started rumors about my marriage. Afterwards, my phone number was leaked. Afterwards, I mysteriously became a criminal that hired a hitman to hurt someone. From start to finish, I was the one that was hurt the most. How did Bai Qiuxing become the one to blame? Tongning asked. The reporters looked at each other. It seemed they really hadn't thought through the entire incident. You are all leaders in the media industry, so I'm sure you can easily understand that if I really wanted to do something, Hai Rui's background alone would be enough to provide me with a safe haven. Why would I put myself in such a difficult position? I, Tongning, already have emoting. Why would I need to cheat on you? When have I, Tongning, ever resorted to such underhanded methods to deal with others? Are you trying to say that Bai Qiuxing is slandering you? But there's no need for him to do so. The reporters couldn't understand why Bai Qiuxing and Tongning would take such a risk if there was no feud between them. Tongning, don't you think your story is a little too ridiculous? At this moment, Bai Qiuxing also agreed with the reporter. He was confident that the public opinion was on his side, so he didn't need to worry about Tongning overturning their conclusions. Don't you know very well whether I'm making up a story or not? Tongning laughed in ridicule. Her eyes finally contained a hint of anger. I was originally giving you a chance. Hurry up and tell us. Don't keep us in suspense. One of the reporters yelled anxiously from below the stage. Actually, the reason why Bai Qiuxing slandered me is simple. It's because he and Gu Hong are lovers. What does it mean if the male lead and the supporting actress are lovers? It means if I withdraw from the cast, the supporting actress will become the female lead. Chapter 442. As soon as Tongning's words left her mouth, the reporters below the stage were in an uproar. Some looked at Tongning in disdain, while others looked like they had just realized something. The entire incident was now connected. The motive and goal were all there. On the other hand, according to Tongning's EQ and IQ, it was indeed difficult for her to hire a hitman to beat someone up. This was also the point that many reporters had been struggling with. Tongning was a part of Hai Rue. Did she need to spend so much effort to teach someone a lesson? Sensing that the reporters were starting to waver, Bai Qiuxing immediately pointed to Tongning and yelled, "I've never seen a woman as shameless as you. In order to escape punishment, you would drag an innocent person into the mess. You said Gu Hong and I were a couple. Who took a photo of us? Who has any evidence? Gu Hong and I are just acquaintances. Don't slander me here. You'd better admit your crimes as soon as possible." "Just acquaintances? Are you sure?" Tongning asked as she looked at Bai Qiuxing. Her eyes were filled with confidence and deep meaning. Bai Qiuxing's heart skipped a beat. However, things had already gotten to this point, and he had no way out. "If you have evidence, then show it to me." Tongning stared at him for 3 seconds before she turned to look at the reporters below the stage. "As long as you have the intention, you can find evidence everywhere. But I think it's best if we get Gu Hong to speak to you in person." "Where's Gu Hong? Is Gu Hong here?" Bai Qiuxing sneered at Tongning. He felt she was usually smart, but even if Gu Hong was here, she wouldn't be on her side. Was there something wrong with her brain? Tongning also looked at Bai Qiuxing with a smile. But her smile seemed dangerous and provocative. The media stretched their necks and looked towards the entrance of the banquet hall. They waited for about 10 seconds, but Gu Hong was nowhere to be seen. In the end, the reporters couldn't take it anymore and asked, "Stop keeping us in suspense. Show us all the evidence you have." "That's right, Tongning. Stop keeping us in suspense. Hurry and tell Gu Hong to come out." Seeing that the reporters were getting anxious, Tongning finally looked towards the entrance of the hall. Not long after, the door to Hall 5 was flung open and Gu Hong wasn't the only one who walked in. Wei-in, the assistant director and producer, were also there. Gu Hong never imagined that she would fall for Wei-in's trap. She thought he wanted to see her because of the replacement. Who would have thought? He directly brought her to Bai Qiuxing's press conference. This time, the reporters were shocked again. What kind of internecine war was going on with the cast of The Lost Relative? This was clearly more exciting than the content in the movies. The male protagonist accused the female protagonist of hiring a hitman to hurt him. The female protagonist accused the male protagonist and the supporting actress of setting up a trap to frame her. What was the truth? At this moment, as the number of people at the scene increased, the story behind it seemed to become even more confusing. "Gu Hong is here. Gu Hong, tell Bai Qiuxing what Tongning said about you and Bai Qiuxing being lovers," but Bai Qiuxing immediately denied it. "As the person involved, how do you see this problem? Are you and Bai Qiuxing lovers or not?" Gu Heng's hand, which was originally holding onto Wei-an's, suddenly dropped to her side. She had dodged left and right, but she still couldn't escape the questioning. Gu Hong looked at Tongning and then back at Bai Qiuxing. One was calm, while the other had hidden intentions. But she had already said that she would protect Bai Qiuxing at all costs. So, after a brief mental battle, Gu Hong lifted her head and replied firmly, "Of course not. How could we possibly be lovers? Bai Qiuxing and I are just acquaintances." "Tongning, I've never offended you. Don't be so ruthless. Plus, everyone knows that you hired a hitman to hurt someone. Why are you trying to divert the public's attention and divert the blame? Bai Qiuxing and I are innocent. Why did you drag me into this?" Acquaintances. Even their lines were the same. Everyone received their answer. But Tongning simply smiled without a trace of panic. In fact, this made Gu Hong feel pressured. Even the person involved has denied it. Let's wait and see what Tongning has to say. Just as the reporters were about to lose control, Wei suddenly waved to everyone and stepped onto the stage. I would like to take this opportunity to express my stance on this matter. Replacing Tongning is a given. My film will not allow such an ambitious person to appear. As soon as Wei spoke, everyone was shocked. Wei had actually made such a decision at a place like this. Was he planning to replace Tongning in public? Everyone turned to the stage and snapped furiously. Meanwhile, Bai Qiuxing looked at his manager with a deeper expression. He even looked a little proud. Hadn't he worked so hard just for this moment? Director Wei, since you've already decided to replace Tongning, have you already found someone else? Director Wei, aren't you afraid of getting yourself into trouble by replacing Tongning like this? Does Director Wei need to be afraid? Isn't it normal to clean up the trash in society? Bai Qiuxing said as he looked at Tongning. It was obvious he was implying that she was trash. Wei did not say a word as he looked at the reporters below the stage and let out a gentle laugh. He felt they were too young and pitiful. At this time, just as everyone thought Wei was going to replace Tongning, he suddenly shrugged his shoulders and asked, "When did I say I was going to replace Tongning? You're not going to replace Tongning? Then who are you going to replace?" "Of course I'm going to replace him, Bai Qiuxing." After speaking, Wei looked at Bai Qiuxing and emphasized, "As for the rest, I will leave it up to Tongning to verify it. Let me just say one thing. The car racing incident that Tongning mentioned did happen, and everyone on set knows about it." The reporters were stunned. After a few seconds, they realized they weren't hearing things. Wei was actually talking about replacing Bai Qiuxing. Replacing Bai Qiuxing was not Tongning. It was Bai Qiuxing. Bai Qiuxing's expression immediately changed as he asked anxiously, "Director Wei, did Tongning say something to you? Or did Hai Rui bribe you?" The lost relative has already chosen an A-list actor. That's all I have to say. After speaking, Wei ignored Bai Qiuxing's expression as he patted Tongning on the shoulder and left. Bai Qiuxing was the victim, yet he was being replaced. What exactly happened in between? Director Wei, Qiuxing and I are the victims, right? Isn't it hard to convince the public by doing this? Gu Hong couldn't help but speak up. Chapter 443. Are you trying to convince the public? Tongning asked in seriousness as she looked at Gu Hong. "Gu Hong, I remember I warned you and gave you a chance. I know you've always been upset that I became the female lead and that you were merely a supporting character. You've always thought that I only got the role because of Mo Ting, so you've always wanted me to leave the film. Am I right? You're slandering me," Gu Hong retorted. "In order to escape punishment, you slandered my and Bai Qiuxing's reputation. Do you have a conscience?" "Slander?" Tongning repeated. She then raised an eyebrow at Gu Hong. "Did you lie to yourself when you said that?" "Tongning, stop putting on an act. If you're so capable, then show us your evidence." Bai Qiuxing pointed at Tongning. Bai Qiuxing pointed at Tongning with a different kind of anxiousness than before. "If you don't have any evidence, then don't spout nonsense and try to scare us." "Evidence? Are you referring to this?" Tongning pulled out a photo of the couple hugging each other from her handbag. In fact, there was more than one photo. In the photos, they were dressed in different outfits and from different angles. It was obvious they hadn't been on a date just once or twice. In fact, they had been on the same date for at least a year. Bai Qiuxing's face turned pale. "What? Don't you recognize the person in the photo?" Tongning showed the photo to the reporters. "Is this the so-called innocence you're talking about? Don't insult the term casual acquaintance." As soon as the reporters saw this explosive news, they immediately passed it around like crazy. Even though one or two of the photos were blurry, there were still plenty that were clear. So, Bai Qiuxing couldn't deny it. "Perhaps you think these photos have been edited? Are you going to tell the reporters that I'm framing you? That's fine. I have other things." After speaking, Tongning pulled out their hotel records. "Let's see how you're going to explain this." "Oh God, they've been dating for a few years. I can't believe they've never been photographed together. They sure keep it a secret. If that's the case, then Bai Qiuxing and Gu Hong are indeed lovers. In that case, is everything Tongning said true?" The reporters below the stage were in a frenzy. The amount of information they received that morning was simply too much. Originally, They thought it was a given that Tongning was going to hurt someone. But she managed to turn the situation around. It was truly thrilling and exciting. In the end, the photos and hotel records were passed to Director Wei, who directly passed them to Gu Hong. Do you want to see them? Gu Heng's face was pale, but she still took the photo and information from Wei Yan's hands. However, her fingers had already turned white and were trembling slightly. After all, this was something that she and Bai Qiuxing could not deny. Bai Qiuxing looked at Gu Hong and tried his best to maintain his composure. Even if Gu Hong and I are lovers, that doesn't mean you didn't hire someone to hurt me. So, you admit your relationship with Gu Hong? Tongning turned her head and raised an eyebrow at Bai Qiuxing. Seeing his silence, she nodded her head. So, you agree? Everyone, please think about it. If the male lead and female lead are a pair of lovers, then as the female lead of this film, what kind of situation am I in? Above all, Gu Hong doesn't believe that I was able to secure the female lead role. This is a police film. At least 60% of the film is filled with dangerous scenes, and I have scenes with both of them. If they were to do something to me and something happened to me, who would benefit from it? Do I need to ask? Of course, it would be Gu Hong. That's right. The reporters followed Tongning's explanation and slowly understood the stakes involved. On the other hand, do you think I was involved in an unspoken rule? Did you think I needed to be involved in an unspoken rule? My husband is in control of the entertainment industry. If I had accepted the filth of this industry from the start, I would have been able to get any resources I wanted. Is taking care of an old man's daily life a problem? Why can't it be a form of respect from the younger generation to the older generation? Did you think, with just a few words, you can prove that you didn't hire someone to hurt you? Bai Qiuxing once again changed the topic to his injury. He wanted to emphasize the main point, and at the same time, he wanted to hide the fact that his relationship with Gu Hong had been exposed. In that case, let me ask you, are you really not going to admit that this is a self-scripted and self-directed show? Tongning pointed out the core of the problem and asked sharply, from the broken brakes, to the spreading of the scandal, to the leaking of the phone number, and finally, to the hiring of a hitman. Don't you think this is all part of a chain reaction? The reporters were shocked by Tongning's conclusion. If this was the truth, then this Bai Qiuxing was a bit too scary. Where's the evidence? You make it sound so good, but do you have any witnesses? Do you have any evidence? Bai Qiuxing was determined to deny everything. At a time like this, as long as he refused to let go of Tongning, she would still be the loser. You've already been replaced. What's the point of continuing to struggle? Tongning asked. At this time, Bai Qiuxing finally realized that he had indeed been replaced by Wei Yan. In fact, he had announced it in front of everyone. I have no idea what you're talking about. Unless you can provide me with evidence, I will continue to fight with you. Tongning did not respond. At this time, Wei Yan couldn't stand it any longer. He had never seen someone as shameless as Bai Qiuxing. It was enough to make one want to pull out a knife and attack him. I'm sorry, but let me interrupt. Bai Qiuxing, do you know who the person you're slandering is? Bai Qiuxing's eyes flashed with a hint of confusion. TSK, you don't even know who you're slandering. Aren't you afraid of slapping yourself in the face? That's right. Tongning was washing Old Black's clothes and cooking for him. But, let me tell you, this isn't strange at all. Even if Tongning was to send him off, you wouldn't be surprised, because it was part of her job. Everyone looked at Wei Yan confusedly. Why? Why was Tongning taking care of him? Even Tongning was a little confused. What did Director Wei Yan mean by this? You guys don't need to look at me. I think it's best for Old Black to explain this matter himself. After speaking, Wei Yan pulled out his phone and made a phone call. Afterwards, the hall once again became noisy. No one knew what Wei Yan was planning to do. So what if he's an investor? Does he think he can do whatever he wants? Bai Qiuxing scoffed. He's not an investor. Wei Yan chuckled as he explained. But, in reality, he was simply keeping everyone in suspense. Chapter 444. If he wasn't an investor, then what other identity did he have that Tongning would do his laundry and cook for him? The reporters craned their necks. They wanted to know how exciting this show was going to be. Between Bai Qiuxing and Tang Ning, who was the truth and who was the one acting? Even if he wasn't an investor, you simply teamed up to bully a small agency like ours. Isn't that because we have Hai Rui backing us? Bai Qiuxing reminded everyone. According to Hai Rui's capabilities, it wasn't difficult for them to fabricate any facts. Bai Qiuxing, if Hai Rui was really as you say, then I wouldn't be standing here right now and accepting your accusations. Tang Ning's voice was unusually cold. If he wasn't, then how do you explain why even the director is on your side when you were the one that hired a thug to hurt someone? You were the one that slept with the old man, and you were the one that hired a thug to hurt someone. No matter how lazy you are, you can't get away with this. Bai Qiuxing responded fiercely. Faced with the argument between the two, the media couldn't help but feel there were too many suspicious points. However, just as the discussions were about to erupt, the doors to the banquet hall once again opened. This time, an old man dressed in a retro suit appeared behind the doors, accompanied by 3 powerful bodyguards. He was no longer as sloppy and relaxed as he usually was. He was not dressed like a beggar, nor was he dressed in a strange outfit. Instead, he was dressed in a suit and looked majestic. As for the face that was revealed, Tang Ning was a little surprised. Although the old man was quite old, he could still see traces of the Mo family. Let me tell you why Elder He couldn't possibly sleep with Tang Ning. Wei Yan scoffed as he stood up and walked over to the old man. After shaking hands, Wei Yan introduced the old man to everyone. Bai Qiuxing, have you never wondered why he's called Elder He? He is the chairman of Hai Rui, the CEO of Hai Rui and Tang Ning's grandfather, Elder Mo Yunyang. Elder Mo simply wants to train his granddaughter-in-law, so he pretended to make things difficult for her. As a granddaughter-in-law, Tang Ning is supposed to wash and cook for her grandfather. Why would she sleep with him? Bai Qiuxing was stunned. How did this happen? When he first came up with this lie, he never expected the old man to have such an identity. He was actually Mo Ting and Tang Ning's grandfather. He was a legend in the entertainment industry. All of a sudden, Bai Qiuxing felt a chill run down his spine. He had previously approached Elder Mo in private with the intention of teaming up against Tang Ning. Who would have thought? Oh my god, this is the legendary creator of Hai Rui. Mr. Mo, rumor has it that his acting skills are amazing. He's the Asian with the most international awards. So, he was actually hiding on set to act with Tang Ning. Unspoken rules? Who was the one who spread it? It's so funny. Hurry up and film, even Elder Mo has been lured out. Elder Mo looked around and said to Bai Qiuxing, what do you think? Are you disappointed that I didn't sleep with Tang Ning? At first, Elder Mo laughed, but he soon walked over to Bai Qiuxing and removed the bandage covering his head, revealing his forehead. Isn't your head perfectly fine? Why is it covered with gauze? Do you look like someone with a brain injury? The old man has eaten more salt than you have eaten rice. How could he not see through your little trick? Bai Qiuxing suddenly panicked as he tried to cover his forehead. However, Elder Mo easily grabbed onto his arm and laughed. Luckily, you are not my grandson. If I had a scourge like you, I would have strangled him to death before doing anything else. I can't believe it. Bai Qiuxing's injury was fake. How disgusting. How could he pretend to be injured in order to gain sympathy? If you put it that way, isn't the answer obvious? Did Bai Qiuxing write and direct this show himself? Isn't that right? He said he and Gu Hong weren't a couple and was slapped in the face by Tang Ning. He said Tang Ning slept with him, that Elder Mo slapped her in the face, and that even Wei Yan wanted to replace him. What else was there to say? Anyone with eyes could tell that Bai Qiuxing was lying. You don't have any evidence, so don't spout nonsense. I am the victim, Bai Qiuxing insisted. Who can prove that I wrote and directed this? I refuse to admit it. Slap. Elder Mo slapped Bai Qiuxing across the face like a righteous old man that had seen an evil criminal and couldn't help but teach him a lesson. You refuse to admit it? Even if I die, I won't admit it, Bai Qiuxing yelled with a red face. Seeing this, Bai Qiuxing's manager wanted to step forward and help, but Elder Mo had control of the entire hall, so no one dared to make a move. After all, he was an influential figure in the entertainment industry. Not only was he Mo Ting's grandfather, even as the founder of Hai Rui, He had witnessed the development of the entertainment industry and held an important position in the industry. Even government officials had to give him some face. Slap. Another slap landed. Elder Imo didn't care who he was hitting. All he knew was, this jerk deserved to be beaten to death. You refuse to admit it? I will convince you right here and now. After speaking, Elder Imo glanced at the bodyguard behind him. Afterwards, the bodyguard walked out of the hall and returned with a man in tow. This man was the criminal that tried to hit on Tongning and hit on Bai Qiusheng. Bai Qiusheng's face turned pale white as he completely forgot to struggle. He really did not expect that old Master Shan would be able to catch him. Everyone looked at the face of the criminal and hurriedly pointed their cameras in that direction and started snapping away. Seeing this, Elder Imo walked over to the man, lifted his head and asked, "There must be someone here who bribed you, right? Point it out yourself. Who is it?" The man glanced at Bai Qiusheng and then at Tongning before lowering his head. "Say something." The old man's temper suddenly exploded. Bai Qiusheng." The man replied timidly. Bai Qiusheng gave me money and told me to help him slander Tongning. After everything was done, I would receive $1 million. Why would he do that? Because Tongning is standing in the way of him and Gu Hong. So he tried everything he could to force Tongning to leave the film. The bearded man lowered his head and revealed the truth. The bearded man lowered his head. He had no choice but to reveal the truth. Don't believe Bai Qiusheng. Everything he says is a lie. He just wrote and directed a show and bribed me and my accomplices to beat him up. All of this was planned by him. Did you hear that? Luckily, you are not an Imo family member. If my grandson was this shameless, I would have shot him in the head with a gun. That way, he wouldn't embarrass me, Elder Imo scoffed. Chapter 445. Everyone looked at the righteous Elder Imo as he scolded Bai Qiusheng until his face turned red and he remained silent. One of the reporters couldn't help but laugh. This Bai Qiusheng is so stupid. He thought his plan was flawless, but in the end, not only did he lose to the director and Elder Imo, he also lost to Tongning. He's playing with fire. I know, right? This time, he's made such a huge mess. I'm guessing he won't have the face to film again. This jerk, whoever accepts him will be boycotted. I was almost tricked by this disgusting person. Luckily, the truth has been revealed. Below the stage, the reporters had already recorded everything that happened in the banquet hall. As for Bai Qiusheng, he went from being the victim in the beginning to being a street rat that everyone wanted to beat up. All of Bai Qiusheng's schemes were exposed. Elder Imo did not give him any face and did not hold back when dealing with him. From now on, you can go and explain everything to the police. Elder Imo immediately brought the police with him. He treated the press conference like an interrogation. The police had already witnessed everything that had happened, so they directly pulled Bai Qiusheng out of his wheelchair. Stop pretending. Come with us. Gu Hong looked at the embarrassed Bai Qiusheng and turned around with teary eyes. She pretended not to see anything and tried to preserve the last bit of his dignity. Meanwhile, in front of the cameras, Bai Qiusheng was taken away by the police, bringing an end to the long farce. I've never seen someone that can act better than Bai Qiusheng. He's too shameless. The reporters were annoyed that they were tricked by Bai Qiusheng. Luckily, Hai Rui quickly investigated the matter. Otherwise, I don't know how many more shocking things this jerk would have done. The most innocent person is Tongning. She never says a word, yet she gets slandered in all sorts of ways. Whether it's being a model or an actress, it's not easy. After the reporters found out the truth, they all looked at Tongning apologetically and helplessly. However, Tongning never cared about these things. After doing what she needed to do, she did not even say a single word of heartache or grievance. She simply bowed to everyone and walked over to Elder Tang's side. What are you still doing here? Let's go now. Elder Imo gestured for Wei and to deal with the aftermath and discuss with Bai Qiusheng's agency about terminating his contract. Afterwards, he officially escorted Tongning away from the scene as Imo Ting's grandfather. Perhaps, because Tongning did not say a word, the public felt extremely guilty towards her. Tongning has suffered so much this time, yet she didn't act pitiful in front of the public like other female celebrities. I think it must have been hard on her. We Tang fans have always known that our idol deserves to be protected with everything we have and will always support him. In reality, Elder Mo also felt that he was missing a chance to prove that Tongning and the Mo family were on the same path. But he wasn't in a rush. At least, he was satisfied with Tongning's performance so far. Although Tongning had been slandered by Bai Qiuxing this time, Bai Qiuxing had accidentally brought her closer to Elder Mo and gave her a grandfather. So, sometimes, she didn't know whether to thank Bai Qiuxing or hate him. News regarding Bai Qiuxing had exploded like a bomb in Beijing. Not long after, Hai Rui instructed the PR department to clarify the truth and reveal Bai Qiuxing's scheme. The entertainment industry was indeed a place filled with schemes and schemes. But there were always some people that would remain pure and flawless no matter how much you tried to taint them. Not long after, the production crew of The Lost Relative announced that they were going to reshoot. After the incident with Bai Qiuxing, Wei-Yin immediately changed the cast. Of course, the female lead would always be Tongning, but the male lead would be replaced by a famous overseas actor. Elder Mo actually disliked foreign actors. Because of his patriotism, he believed that people from his own country had to step out into the world. But he didn't want to see foreign actors enter the industry and take over the Asian market. So, on this point, perhaps he could also test Tongning. Chapter 446. The foreign actor was called Taka. Although he was an American, he was handsome and gentlemanly, like a British aristocrat. Of course, his appearance was one of the reasons why he was so popular on screen. But the main reason was because he had debuted at a young age and was known as a versatile actor. He had a wealth of acting experience and was able to play any role with ease. This time, Wei-Yin put in a lot of effort to invite Taka. Of course, there was also a Mo Ting helping him from behind the scenes. For Tongning's sake, he was always willing to give her the best. Because of the incident with Bai Qiuxing, Tongning's reputation in the entertainment industry increased. After all, not many people could still hold their heads high after going through so many hardships. Tongning was so framed that she went straight to the police for an investigation. But whether it was before or after the incident was cleared up, she did not cry or act pitiful in front of the public. In fact, after Bai Qiuxing's press conference, she once again disappeared from the public eye and returned to filming. From now on, I will watch Tongning's films. As long as it's related to Tongning, I will stand by her side unconditionally. I admire Tongning. She is a straightforward person. We should give her a round of applause for this incident. From now on, let's see who else can stand in Tongning's way. After all, I admire her attitude. If people don't offend her, she won't offend them. Oh, why do I feel like Tongning is so cool? Also, Grandfather Mo, how he lectured Bai Qiuxing during the press conference. It was so satisfying. That is how an elder should behave. Hai Rui is still the same Hai Rui and Mo Ting is still the same Mo Ting. From now on, trust in his judgment. Only I have noticed that Tongning is so skilled at washing clothes and cooking. She is not delicate at all. President, 80% of netizens have expressed their support for the madam and the chairman. The madam has refreshed the public's trust in her. Lu Che looked at the results of the survey and couldn't help but laugh as he told Mo Ting. For an actor, it was easy to be hated, but it was difficult to build a good impression. Yet, after this incident, Tongning had established a high level of trust in her. She deserves all of this. Mo Ting had already expected this result, so his response was extremely calm. Because not everyone could insist on being themselves, but his wife could be loyal to one person to the end, even though it was not appropriate to use this word here. The madam has a high chance of winning the Fei Tian Awards this year. Lu Che expressed his gratitude and admiration towards Tongning. Tongning's appearance had completely overturned his understanding of women. Women were not just weak, they could also be strong and wise. Women don't have to rely on men, they can also strive to become stronger. Chapter 447. Elder Imo sat to one side with a fan in his hand. His gaze was sharp and deep. As he watched Tongning lay her hands on Taka, he couldn't help but let out a humph. At least she didn't embarrass him. This was how foreigners should be treated. Hit them hard and show no mercy. Taka held onto his chest as he took a few steps back and looked at Tongning in surprise. He never imagined that a woman could be so strong. After Tongning stood up, she expressed her concern for Taka, but she didn't act overly familiar with him. Taka found this interesting, so he shook his head. I'm looking forward to acting with you more and more. You will only regret it. Tongning's voice contained a slight sense of contempt. She didn't like the casual vibe that Taka gave off. It was as if a woman should like him. But the world didn't revolve around him. Actually, Tongning had no idea that her attitude had made Elder Tang's face light up with joy. Obviously, Tongning's dislike of Taka was to his liking. After all, when Hairue was in his hands, it had never ventured internationally. The person that made Hairue what it was today was Imo Ting, who was good at dealing with foreigners. This was also the reason why Elder Imo didn't like to stay in the office. He also understood that Imo Ting did not shy away from foreigners. Imo Ting was aware of Elder Mo's feelings, but he had never helped him. And now, Tongning was showing the same attitude. Elder Imo couldn't help but burst into laughter. He was delighted. From now on, if he ever said something like this again, he wouldn't have to worry about no one responding. For the next few moves, I want you guys to be more fluid. Let's rehearse and see how it goes. Wei entrusted the two of them, especially since he could tell that Tongning wanted to put Taka in his place. She wanted Taka to respect her. So, when Wei and Tongning looked at each other, there was a deeper meaning in his eyes. Soon, they were going to complete the moves in one go. Because Taka was mentally prepared, he put away his frivolous expression and became serious. Especially when Tongning attacked him fiercely. He was once again shocked by Tongning's explosive power. We are not on the same path, but, in the end, we will reach the same destination. If I can't save the hostage today, I will take you down with me. After the two exchanged their lines, it was time for the final shoot. After being shocked twice, Taka no longer dared to underestimate Tongning. Needless to say, Tongning's punches landed on his flesh. Although it hurt a lot, it felt unusually real. In fact, he felt like he was fighting with his life on the line. Okay. In the end, the results were extremely satisfactory. After receiving pointers from the old man, Tongning was getting better at controlling her character's emotions. With the addition of Taka's strong acting skills, the fight scene between the two made everyone's hearts race. It was a thrill. Tongning, I haven't been able to find a chance to do so for the past few days. Tonight, let's have a gathering with everyone to welcome Taka, Wei suggested after the two finished filming. However, Tongning simply smiled and rejected. I won't be going. I have even more difficult scenes to film tomorrow. I need to go home and ask Ting to practice for me. All right then, you can go back. Wei nodded and did not force the issue. Afterwards, Tongning turned around and left. Taka was surprised by her actions. How could there be a female celebrity that disliked parties? In reality, it had been a few days since Tongning had seen Imo Ting. There was no scenery outside that could compare to Imo Ting's good looks. No matter how exciting the outside world was, it couldn't compare to a hug from Imo Ting. 11 p.m. Song Yinshu drove Tongning back to Hyatt Regency. Of course, she knew Imo Ting was already asleep, so as she entered the bedroom, she made sure to be as quiet as possible. Perhaps it was because of the exhaustion he had accumulated over the past few days. Imo Ting did not wake up at all. Tongning gently relaxed his furrowed brows as she got up to grab her robe and headed to the bedroom. Half an hour later, Tongning lifted the blankets and lay down beside Imo Ting. However, just as she thought Imo Ting would not notice she had returned home, Imo Ting suddenly flipped over and pulled her into his embrace. His actions were extremely natural. It was as if she had never left his side. The big boss of the entertainment industry sat on top of the entertainment industry, yet he had always maintained his purity and gave all his tenderness to her. Tongning confirmed that Imo Ting had not woken up. He must have subconsciously sensed she was here, so he reached out to hug her. Tongning looked quietly at the sleeping Ting. This was the man she admired, the husband she loved the most, and the partner she was going to cherish and love for the rest of her life. This small action of his was enough to move Tongning. She could tell that Ting could not leave her either. Neither of them could leave the other. Thinking of this, Tongning suddenly flipped over and pressed her body on top of Ting. She leaned forward and pressed her lips against his. At this moment, Ting opened his eyes. After a second of surprise, he took the initiative to respond. After the passionate kiss ended, Ting hugged Tongning and asked, "What happened?" Tongning lay on top of Ting's body and pressed the tip of her nose against his. "I was touched." Huh. Ting didn't quite understand. "Either way, I want you." After speaking, Tongning tilted her head and kissed him again. This time, Ting did not hesitate. The wife he missed the most was by his side, and she was madly in love with him. This was the proudest thing he had ever done in his life. Compared to expanding Hyrule to its current status, this made him happier. Their burning bodies intertwined. It was like they were going to burn each other to ashes. At the last moment, Tongning stopped Ting from grabbing her things. "Just like this, come inside." "I'm afraid I'll hurt you," Ting said in a suppressed voice. "You won't bear to," Tongning replied confidently. "Just like this, Ting." Perhaps it was because of the look in Tongning's eyes, or perhaps it was because of her soft cry. Ting could no longer hold back as he fiercely penetrated Tongning. Even after they reached the clouds, Tongning still held onto Ting's arm tightly. "Just like this. You don't feel bad?" Ting asked gently as he brushed aside her hair. Tongning shook her head. "I feel safe." Ting placed a kiss on her earlobe and covered them with a blanket. However, he did not forget to take a look at the time and calculate how much longer Tongning would have to complete filming. "Ting, a couple of days ago, Grandfather mentioned his achievements to me. He said his biggest achievement was training you. What about you?" Tongning asked as she pressed herself against Ting's body. "Me?" Ting thought for a moment before replying with a gentle smile. "My biggest achievement is giving you a happy family." Afterwards, Tongning walked towards them, and Taka immediately stood up straight, ready to welcome her. However, Tongning pounced into Ting's arms and buried her head in his chest. "Why did you come at this time?" Ting hugged Tongning tightly and replied gently beside her ear, "I am your manager. No matter what time I come, it is always reasonable." "Let's go. I just need to remove my makeup and we can go home," Tongning said as she lifted her head. "The director gave me special permission. I have the day off tomorrow." "Let's go then." After speaking, Ting held onto Tongning's hand. However, before he left, he couldn't help but say to Taka, "Good luck." Taka's expression was extremely awkward. He scratched his head and did not dare to look at the couple. It wasn't until they were a distance away that he approached Wei and asked, "The man that Tongning was hugging. Oh, you mean him? He is Tongning's manager and husband. In other words, he is the CEO of Hyrule." Taka's face turned red. What did he just say in front of Ting? The man's self-esteem was suddenly hurt. Meanwhile, Ting's expression did not look any better as he left with his wife. Imagine, how would he feel when he found out that his wife had a housefly by her side? "You don't look too happy. Did Taka say something to you?" After boarding the car, Tongning couldn't help but laugh as she looked at Ting's expression. "Don't worry. If he dares to bully my husband, I will teach him a lesson for you." "How did you teach him a lesson?" "Of course I learned from you. In the name of filming, I beat him up until his face is swollen. I will give Director Wei a phone call right now and ask him to add more scenes." Ting held onto Tongning's right hand as she reached for her phone and squeezed her palm. "You always have a way to make me calm down. There's nothing to be angry about. There's less than 2 months left until filming ends. After that, we won't be seeing each other again." Ting nodded his head as he drove Tongning away from the set. In a day or two, it would be their wedding anniversary. Thinking back to last year's August 19th, Tongning still felt like life was full of surprises and legends. If she hadn't plucked up the courage to ask Ting to marry her that day, perhaps her life would have turned out differently. She wouldn't have been as happy as she was now. Mrs. Imo, I want to congratulate you. You've already been married to Mr. Imo for a year. After hearing this, Tongning smiled and whispered something in Ting's ear. Afterwards, Ting suddenly fell into deep thought. After The Lost Relative finishes filming, WH will be released in the country. Although I haven't accepted any follow-up work for you, isn't it too early for us to have a baby? Mr. Imo, you will be 34 next year. Do you want our baby to call you grandfather when it's born? Tongning rarely argued with Ting. She had always gone along with his arrangements. Ting sighed and had no choice but to nod his head. Although Tongning usually listened to his arrangements, he was the one who compromised more. I really don't know what to do with you. In that case, I won't take a day off tomorrow. I'll leave my time for our wedding anniversary. Ting did not say a word. This time, he completely agreed with Tongning's arrangements. I also need to get a health checkup to make sure the tiredness from all this time won't affect my pregnancy. Ting followed Tongning's instructions. He had no choice. If there was a wife-doting squad in this world, then he would definitely be the honorary captain. After all, everything about Tongning was a habit to him. Let's do it on our wedding anniversary. I'll get Lu Che to make arrangements. Giving birth. Thinking of these 3 words, Ting felt unprepared for a moment. In fact, he didn't know what to do. He didn't know how a soft thing would turn out to be in this world. Perhaps all men, before becoming a father, would have that little bit of panic. Above all, they will tell her that there is something wrong with her body. They will use medical treatment as an excuse to find a reliable doctor to remove her uterus and make it impossible for her to get pregnant. Removing the uterus. After hearing this, Tang Xian felt a chill run down her spine. Although she hated Tongning, hearing these words from her mother-in-law made her feel a chill run down her spine and spread throughout her body. But she still wanted revenge. Tongning had no idea there was a huge conspiracy waiting for her. Worst of all, it was going to be her and Ting's wedding anniversary. Over the next couple of days, after seeing Ting with his own eyes, Taka felt a deep sense of defeat. He was obviously younger than Ting, but apart from that, he had no other strengths that could compete with Ting. As a result, he was no longer as arrogant and mischievous as he was in the past. In fact, he would sometimes avoid Tongning. Weiyan was a little surprised, so he asked Tongning in private, "Did you teach Taka a lesson? Why has he been acting like a mouse seeing a cat whenever he sees you?" Director Wei, I don't have that much of an impact. If my guess is correct, he must have been shocked by Ting. Weiyan smiled as he nodded his head. He couldn't help but praise Ting. Amongst the younger generation of men, I don't think anyone can compare to him. Your husband is the best. He knows everything. Thank you, Director Wei, for your compliment. You're not bad either. You and Ting are a good match. At this moment, Weiyan was full of praise for Tongning. He had personally witnessed how she had withstood all sorts of trials and tribulations. Yet, she still completed all of his requests with determination. This wasn't something an ordinary actress could do. I heard you're planning to have a child? What are you going to do with your filming? Tongning was a little surprised, but she quickly regained her senses. Elder Imo was most likely the one that leaked this information, so she did not refute. I'm planning to have one. Your acting career has just begun. WH will be released at the end of the year and The Lost Relative will be released next summer. I haven't left the industry yet, Tongning replied with a smile. Director Wei, as a model, I may not be able to walk the runway for the rest of my life. But, as an actress, I am confident that as long as I can act, even if I leave temporarily, I will be able to return to the industry. After hearing this, Weiyan patted his wife on the shoulder. I believe you. Plus, I've seen your other works. I heard stupid, has been well received overseas as well. Westerners' love works with deep meanings. Your husband is the best person to promote them. Also, WH, which will be released at the end of the year, is a high-quality film. I've watched the trailer for a few seconds and can't help but say, your performance is amazing. Of course, there's also our film. Don't worry, we will definitely help you reach the highest level. The highest level? Hearing this, Tongning was a little confused. As a model, she was only one step away from becoming an international supermodel. So, what about as an actress? I heard you adjusted your rest schedule because of your wedding anniversary. But, did you guys get married so early? Although Wayan didn't know the story between the couple, he had heard a lot of interesting things about Tongning. But, they only announced their marriage in February of this year. This time, Tongning did not respond. She simply looked at Wayan with deep meaning. Wayan seemed to have understood something, so he did not ask any further. He simply told her to get some rest and not to worry about the progress of the production. After thanking him, Tongning left with Song Yin-shu. During this time, Tang Jingxian gave her a phone call as a way of showing his concern. You should worry about yourself first. You are now a heavenly king. Don't waste your time doing stupid things. Tongning was well aware of Tang Jingshuan's recent popularity. Not only did he release a new album, he also appeared on variety shows. It seemed, after the previous incident, he had slowly understood how to survive in the entertainment industry. Tongning was relieved. This way, even if she temporarily retreated from the industry due to her pregnancy, she wouldn't have to worry about no one protecting Tang Jingxian. But, pregnancy? Was it that simple? Tongning helped Long Jia out of bed and helped her tidy up her clothes. Do you feel better now? Long Jia hesitated for a moment before letting out a sigh of relief. At least, there was nothing wrong with her body. Even though, at this moment, her limbs still felt weak and cold. Not long after, the couple drove out of the hospital. As they sat in the car, Tongning looked at Long Jia and asked, "Why do you keep things to yourself and never tell Lu Che? Is he not worthy of your trust?" "It's not because of that. I care about him too much, so I'm afraid he'll be disappointed." Tongning looked at Long Jia. She didn't know when it started, but Long Jia's status in their marriage had become more and more humble. Lu Che was obviously working hard. From now on, you can either tell him about things like this, or I'll tell him. It's your choice, Tongning said firmly. Don't always think too highly of yourself and make things harder for Lu Che. Would I? Long Jia asked cautiously. If I was Lu Che, and you didn't call me at a time like this, I would feel terrible, Tongning said straightforwardly. The person Lu Che likes is your original self. But, why do I feel like, for the sake of our child, you haven't been yourself lately? Do you want to get your results before you leave? Long Jia reminded as she saw the hospital getting further and further away. It's not important to me. Plus, I've left my phone number. The hospital will contact me. Chapter 451. Late at night. Zhong family home. After Mother Zhong finished making a series of phone calls, Tang Xian finally approached. Mom, how did it go? Everything has been arranged. The doctor responsible for Tongning's examination has already received her payment. She wouldn't dare to refuse. Mother Zhong comforted as she patted Tang Xian on the back of her hand. Mother Zhong patted Tang Xian on the back of her hand comfortingly. I've also arranged for the media to find out that Tongning can't get pregnant. Let's see how she's going to survive in the Mo family. Most importantly, you are currently pregnant. It's about time you start planning your return to the Tang family. Tang Xian rubbed her stomach. This child was her final bargaining chip. She couldn't afford to make any more mistakes. I've long since sent people to keep an eye on your grandfather's movements. Ever since Tang Kor was taken over by Xia Yuling, his life has become extremely leisurely. But, on the 20th of every month, he would visit an orphanage owned by Tang Kor to see the helpless children. This is a reflection of his desire to have a great-grandchild. When the time comes, we will arrange a meeting nearby for you to meet. After hearing Mother Zhong's plan, Tang Xian's eyes lit up with a sharp light. Over the past few months, she had already endured to the limit. This time, she was going to make Tongning and her son suffer a fate worse than death. After returning home from the hospital, Tongning tiptoed into the study room. Seeing Imo Ting sitting in his office chair, she gently leaned against his back and sat down. Imo Ting was flipping through some documents when he sensed the woman behind him. He did not turn around as he asked, "What's wrong? Is it because of Long Jie again?" "Yes. Why hasn't Lu Che resolved Long Jie's worries after so long?" Tongning asked helplessly. "This is Long Jie. On the surface, she appears to be careless, but in reality, she is more sensitive and meticulous than anyone else. She cares too much about Lu Che. Since you're tired, go get some rest." Imo Ting turned around and pulled her into his embrace as he gently stroked her hair. "Who cares about my wife?" Tongning breathed in the scent of Imo Ting's body as she stood up from his embrace. "Okay, from now on, I will care about my husband. Go have a shower. We need to go to the hospital tomorrow." Tongning placed a gentle kiss on his cheek before turning around to leave. As he had a checkup the next day, Imo Ting did not do anything to her that night. He simply hugged her and coaxed her until she fell asleep. Only then did he get out of bed and give Lu Che a phone call. In the middle of the night, Lu Che received a phone call. After returning to bed, he shook Long Jie awake and asked in seriousness, "What did you do today?" "Huh." Long Jie rubbed her eyes sleepily. "Just now, the president called me and scolded me in a roundabout way. He told me to control my wife and not to always burden his wife." Lu Che looked at Long Jie helplessly. "Tell me, what did you do this time that I don't know about?" Lu Che looked at Long Jie for a moment. In the end, he seemed to have guessed the answer. "It's because of the child, isn't it? I told you a long time ago that I don't care. Why do you keep forcing yourself?" Lu Che asked as he furrowed his brows. "How can I make you believe that no matter what happens, I won't leave you and will protect our family?" Long Jie leaned against Lu Che's body and lowered her head. "I feel like I'm becoming more and more unfamiliar with myself. You and Tongning are right. I'm the one that can't let go. From now on, I will tell you everything and won't hide anything from you. Can I still trust your words?" "I swear." Long Jie raised her hand in a serious manner. It was almost like a ritual. "This time, I'm serious. I've already spoken to my parents. They won't rush us to have children. You can have them whenever you want. It's fine if you don't want them." "Okay." Long Jie nodded her head. She suddenly felt like she was being quite silly. Tomorrow is the president and madam's wedding anniversary, yet the madam has been taken over by you for the entire night. No wonder the president is angry. Can't you be a little more observant? You've never been fierce to me." Long Jie felt wronged. "Okay, go to sleep. I'll just curse you in my heart." Lu Che hugged Long Jie once again and covered the couple with the blanket. Deep down, he knew that everything Long Jie did was for his sake. He and Long Jie were insignificant people, so he simply wanted to protect his family. If he couldn't even protect Long Jie's heart, then what right did he have to be someone else's husband? The next day, Tongning woke up in bed and noticed Imo Ting looking at her. She quickly cupped her face in her hands and said, "I just woke up. I haven't even washed up yet." "No, you're still as beautiful as ever," Imo Ting said as he placed a kiss on her forehead. "Happy wedding anniversary, wifey." Tongning hooked her arms around Imo Ting's neck and the couple hugged each other tightly. A moment later, Tongning looked at the time and struggled to get up. "I'm going to go wash up first. After that, we'll go to the hospital together." "Okay." Imo Ting nodded. Tongning got up first while Imo Ting tidied up the bed. At this time, Tongning's phone began to vibrate. It was an unknown number. Imo Ting picked up the phone and heard the person on the other end say, "Hello, Miss Tang. The results of the HCG test you did yesterday at Beijing Hospital have come out. According to the report, you were pregnant. May I ask when it would be convenient for you to come to the hospital for a follow-up?" Hearing the word pregnant, Imo Ting froze. "Miss Tang, are you listening? I am her husband. What did you just say about Tongning? Emoting asked uncertainly. Hello, Air. According to the report, Miss Tang is pregnant. The person on the other end of the line politely repeated after hearing the deep and pleasant voice of a man. Tongning's husband. Wasn't that Emoting? However, the results are not completely accurate. So, we suggest Miss Tang come for another ultrasound. Thank you, but I already have plans, Emoting replied calmly before hanging up the phone. Emoting pretended to be calm as he hung up the phone. At this moment, his emotions were extremely complicated. Tongning was pregnant? Pregnant, pregnant. These three words filled Emoting's mind until Tongning finished washing up and walked out of the bathroom. Seeing Emoting still standing by the bedside, Tongning couldn't help but ask curiously, "What's wrong?" Emoting looked at Tongning and subconsciously looked at her stomach. He then smiled. "It's nothing. Go downstairs and wait for me. I'll make breakfast. Don't move around too much. We'll go to the hospital in a bit." Okay. As Emoting was used to not allowing Tongning into the kitchen, she did not think too much about it. As for Emoting, he did not immediately say anything. Firstly, he wanted to confirm his suspicions. Secondly, he was at a complete loss and had no idea what to do. Chapter 452. After a few seconds of being in a daze, he was filled with joy. Emoting couldn't wait to hug Tongning tightly in his arms and tell her that they were about to become parents. Thinking about the little thing that was about to come out of Tongning's stomach and how it would be connected to him by blood, Emoting felt his blood begin to boil. The sense of pride overwhelmed him from head to toe. Father. This was a feeling that he had never imagined before. This feeling was too wonderful. After tidying up a little, Emoting stepped out of the bedroom. As soon as he saw Tongning sitting on the sofa peeling a fruit, he immediately grabbed the knife from her hand. "Didn't I tell you not to touch anything? I'm just peeling a fruit." At this moment, Tongning had no idea that accompanying Long Jie for the HCG blood test would be a huge help to her. She simply couldn't understand why Emoting was so nervous. On a special day like this, put away your knife and don't touch it. Emoting found a seemingly forced excuse to stop Tongning from taking out the knife. Tongning didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but she still nodded her head. "Okay, I'll listen to you." Emoting ran his hand through Tongning's hair before heading into the kitchen. He never imagined, apart from the medical staff, he would be the first person to find out about Tongning's pregnancy. Perhaps even Tongning herself didn't expect it. If he thought about it, it must have happened the last time Tongning returned home in the middle of the night and they weren't using any protection. Soon, Lu Che arrived at Hyatt Regency. However, Emoting's gaze towards Lu Che wasn't as cold as it was when he was on the phone the night before. This made Lu Che feel extremely flattered. "President, everything is ready. We can set off at any time." With Lu Che's help, Emoting boarded the black car with Tongning and drove her to the hospital for a full-body checkup. On the way there, Emoting held onto Tongning's right hand tightly and couldn't help but smile. Tongning could tell that he was in a good mood. Originally, she thought it was because of their one-year wedding anniversary. But who would have thought it was because of the little ting in her stomach? Seeing the smile on Emoting's face, Tongning relaxed a little. Not long after, the couple arrived at the hospital. Seeing Emoting remove his jacket, Tongning couldn't help but ask, "Are you going to get a checkup too?" Emoting shook his head with a doting look on his face. "I just want to keep you company." What's there to accompany when it comes to something like this? Tongning couldn't help but pull down his sleeve. "I'm just doing a checkup." Normally, she would have bruises on her body during filming. Although Emoting's heart ached, he was never as careful as he was today. However, Tongning did not think too much about it. Thanks to Lu Che's arrangements, the hospital was very quiet. It didn't take long before the couple arrived at the door of the ultrasound room. However, the doctor said to Emoting, "President Emo, please wait outside. Family members, please wait outside." "He's fine," Tongning replied. "You'd better step back," the doctor insisted with a smile. "This is the hospital's rule. men are not allowed to enter. Under normal circumstances, family members were not allowed to enter the examination room. It was reasonable for the doctor to make such a request. Emoting instinctively furrowed his brows, but he did not insist. Instead, a deeper look appeared in his eyes. In that case, wait for me at the door, Tongning said as she held onto the man's hand comfortingly. Emoting nodded his head as he watched Tongning enter the ultrasound room. A few minutes later, Tongning walked out. How is it? Why are you so nervous? It's not like I'm pregnant. Tongning couldn't help but laugh. It's just a test. Emoting did not respond. He simply watched as the doctor handed Tongning the report. Luce received it in his hands as they headed towards the gynecologist's office. Seeing the doctor holding onto the report, Emoting originally expected to hear the good news he had heard over the phone. However, after looking at the report, the gynecologist furrowed her brows. The lining of your uterus is very thin. Miss Tang, have you been injured before? Or have you had an abortion? How is that possible? Tongning immediately replied, Don't misunderstand. Inflammation can also cause damage to the inside of the uterus, making it difficult for the fetus to implant. Above all, there is a shadow on the left side of your uterus. Based on the results, it has been diagnosed as a tumor, commonly known as a uterine fibroid. Look at this location. According to its size, it is over 3 centimeters. After hearing the gynecologist's words, Tongning and Emoting's expressions both changed. They didn't know what to do. Especially Emoting. This was completely different to what he had heard over the phone this morning. But my body doesn't show any signs. You are an actress. Your daily life is extremely busy and you are highly focused. So, sometimes, you will automatically ignore your body's reactions. This is normal, the doctor explained as she placed the report in front of Tongning. The doctor placed the report in front of Tongning and explained in seriousness, Don't worry, it can be treated. Plus, the surgical techniques nowadays are very advanced. It won't leave you with too big of a scar. As for the condition of your uterus, it can be improved through medical treatment. But you may need to stop your busy work and take care of your body. Emoting held onto Tongning's shoulder and leaned her against his body. He then asked the gynecologist in a deep voice, Can I act? If you still want to have children, then of course you can't continue to abuse your body. Your wife is already in this state. How could you still want her to act? Faced with the gynecologist's criticism, Emoting did not explain. Tongning understood why he asked this question. Go home and make some preparations. Then, arrange for a hospital stay. Tongning didn't know how she walked out of the gynecologist's office. She could no longer feel her legs moving. She wasn't someone that abused her body. In fact, she loved herself more than anyone else. But why did she end up like this? Ting, let's talk at home. Emoting carried her in his arms and comforted, Don't overthink it. In reality, Emoting found it even harder to accept than Tongning. After all, the phone call from this morning had given him too much hope. But the medical report was right in front of him. He couldn't afford to have any doubts. Which side did it go wrong? To comfort Tongning, Emoting carried her into the bedroom as soon as they returned home and placed her on the bed. He then comforted her, Go to sleep. Don't think about anything else. I'll stay here with you. She couldn't have a child. She couldn't act. For Tongning, this was a devastating blow. She couldn't bear a child for the man she loved the most, and she had to give up on the career she loved. Either way, it was fatal for Tongning. Chapter 453. Is it because I've done too many wrong things in my daily life that God is treating me like this? Tongning's voice sounded a little choked up. She rarely cried. Even during difficult times, she had never broken down. But when she found out she couldn't get pregnant for now, she felt so wrong that she wanted to cry. Her throat almost burned. Emoting lay down on the bed and wrapped his arm around her comfortingly. You haven't done anything wrong. Even if God wants to punish someone, it should be me. What has it got to do with you? Be a good girl. Don't think too much about it. Things aren't as serious as you think. You can get better. We can take our time. But I won't object to what you want to do. Even if we don't have a child in the end, having you is enough for me, Emoting said seriously as he ran his hand through her hair. Seriously, Ning, you can't imagine how important you are to me. Even if you want my life, I can do it. Not to mention, I don't want a child. I just want you to be healthy. After hearing Emoting's words, Tongning suddenly turned around and buried herself in Emoting's arms as she began to cry. It wasn't until she was tired from crying that she fell asleep. Emoting's heart ached as he placed a kiss on her forehead and watched over her until she fell asleep. Afterwards, he grabbed Tongning's phone and entered the study room. He then returned the phone call he had given her that morning. Hello, this is Beijing Hospital. This is Emoting. I want to know if I can still get Tongning's report from your hospital? The woman obviously didn't expect Emoting to call her back. After a few seconds of silence, she finally stuttered, yes, I can get it. I'll send someone to get it. No, I'll go get it myself. Tongning's injury was more painful than a knife stabbing into his heart. To get to the bottom of the matter, Emoting decided to do it himself. He didn't want Lu Che to do it for him. He simply gave Lu Che a phone call and asked Long Jie to watch over Tongning. If Tongning woke up, it would make her feel a little better. Afterwards, he personally drove over to Beijing Hospital and made an appointment with the doctor. Not only did he receive the report, he also asked the doctor what the results were. Mr. Mo, a normal pregnant woman's blood HCG value is less than 100 IUL. Your wife's HCG value has already reached 7,000, so we have confirmed that she is pregnant. This was how the doctor explained to Emoting. Even though, from the moment he laid eyes on Emoting, the doctor already felt pressured. However, my wife went to another hospital for a checkup. She did an ultrasound and was diagnosed with a thin endometrium and uterine fibroids. Mr. Mo, I can tell you that it's impossible for Miss Tang to have a gynecological disease. A person's body can be judged from their physical state. This is my 40 years of experience as a doctor. I don't know which hospital you went to for your checkup, but I can guarantee that if Miss Tang isn't pregnant, I won't be able to do it. After hearing this, Emoting's heart became even heavier. He could no longer tell who was real and who was fake. If the results of one hospital can't be trusted, then go to a few more hospitals. Then you'll know who's right and who's lying. Indeed, this was the only and most accurate method. After receiving the results from Beijing Hospital, Emoting returned to Hyatt Regency and asked Lu Che to arrange a few more tests for Tongning at another hospital. However, just as Emoting stepped through the front door, Lu Che received a phone call and his expression changed. President, the madam's results have been leaked. The media are going crazy. Immediately notify PR, Emoting said coldly as he instructed Lu Che in seriousness. Don't let Tongning know. But how can something like this be hidden? Lu Che looked at Emoting suspiciously. President, I think there's something fishy about this matter. The hospital I arranged for us was extremely secretive. Logically speaking, the hospital signed a confidentiality agreement, so there's no way they would leak the madam's results. As soon as this was mentioned, Emoting suddenly stopped in his tracks. That's right. Because it was related to Tongning, he almost lost his composure. They had just finished the first part of the test, when the second part was leaked. Yet, the two hospitals presented different results. It was worth mentioning that Emoting's tense nerves suddenly relaxed. The more conspiracy this was, the more it proved that the results from Beijing Hospital were correct. President, I will make arrangements for the tests. You will investigate the source of the leak and find out who the mastermind is, Emoting said coldly. If someone did this on purpose, then I want you to investigate their motive. I will show them what it means to live a life worse than death. Understood. Lu Che saw the ruthlessness in Emoting's eyes and nodded his head seriously. Afterwards, Emoting turned around and returned to his bedroom. As he pushed open the door, he noticed Tongning was still asleep. So, he gestured to Long Jie to keep quiet. Long Jie gently got up from the side of the bed and gave the couple some privacy. She then headed outside to vent about the news she had just seen on her phone. What did they mean by Tongning was a hen that couldn't lay eggs? What did they mean by Tongning's condition was caused by too many abortions? Lu Che noticed the gloomy expression on his wife's face and knew she was feeling indignant. Are you still angry? How could I not be angry? I didn't even know Tongning's health was in such a bad state. Yet, the media that wants to see the world in chaos are still spreading rumors. I'm so angry, Long Jie said as she held her head. Even so, she still lowered her voice in fear of disturbing Tongning's sleep. The president will handle this matter. Don't worry. All we can do now is hope Tongning doesn't see this news. How big of a blow would this be for her? Not being able to get pregnant, being rumored to have multiple abortions, and having her acting career affected, even a woman couldn't handle this kind of destructive attack. No matter how strong Tongning was, she couldn't ignore everything and ignore everything. Mo Ting was well aware of the damage she had suffered, but he was more than willing to believe that Tongning actually had a child in her stomach. The feeling of blood being thicker than water couldn't be wrong. So, he stretched out his hand and gently rubbed her stomach until she opened her eyes. You're awake? Uh-huh, Tongning replied in a raspy voice. I'm sorry, hubby. Today was supposed to be a happy day, but I never expected. As for Wayan, I helped you apply for another day off and he agreed. I know you won't give up on acting, so I can only make arrangements like this. Chapter 454. Tongning was infertile. The media embellished the story and spread it everywhere. The so-called inspection report was also spread everywhere. But this time, not only were there people that ridiculed Tongning, there were also a lot of people that, after the incident with Bai Qiuxing, had developed a sense of trust in Tongning and decided to protect her. Tongning is so pitiful. How could someone use something as private as a physical examination to create hype? They've gone too far. I'm about to cry from anger. What did Tongning do wrong for the media to not let her go? Disgusting. I believe in Mo Ting's feelings for Tongning. No matter what happens to her health, Mo Ting will take good care of her. Let's leave the heartless media to their fate. It's best for outsiders not to make wild guesses. There are many reasons for a thin endometrium. Not too long ago, Tongning even got injured while filming Hidden Expert. I really don't know how you guys could be so dirty as to guess that she had a miscarriage. Tongning has already kept a low profile. Hai Rui has already kept a low profile. What else does the media want? Are they going to eat her up without spitting out the bones? I hope Hai Rui will step up and defend our rights. Tongning really just wants to act. She wants to be a good actress. I hope you guys don't hurt her anymore. After so many incidents, Tongning's hard work had finally paid off. Online, there were also fans who tried to stop her from posting false pictures of her. This made Tang Xian and Mother Zhong, who originally wanted to see the smoke of war, feel a little disappointed. What's wrong with these netizens? Don't you like to watch a good show? Why are they all standing up for her this time? Tang Xian clenched her fists. She had long forgotten what kind of image she had in the hearts of the netizens. At that time, the news about who was the child of a mistress was several times more sensational than it was now. Mother Zhong's expression did not look too good. After all, for so many people to stand up for Tongning, it was obvious that her status in the industry could not be compared to before. It doesn't matter. As long as the Mo family knows what they're doing, we won't fail. But what about the Mo family's attitude? Of course, Elder Mo also saw the unreliable news as soon as it was released. So, of course, he gave the Mo couple a phone call. At first, Mo Ting picked up the phone. Perhaps he was afraid of Elder Mo's reaction. So he spoke first. Regardless of whether Tongning can bear a child or not, she will always be my only wife. On the other side of the phone, Elder Mo sighed and coldly snorted. Who wants to talk to you about this? How is the Tang girl? As the CEO of Hai Rui, how could he always let his wife appear in the headlines? Are you still working? He won't let me come. Mo Ting could not help but raise his eyebrows. Your grandfather isn't an old fool. I don't know how to judge whether Tongning is good or bad. I'm strict with her, but I'm doing it for her own good. Give her the phone. I'll talk to her. It's hard to talk to you. Ting. After 2 seconds of silence, Ting handed the phone to Tongning, who was sitting on the bed. Grandfather is on the phone? At first, Tongning was a little nervous, but she still accepted the phone from Ting. Grandfather? Lass. As soon as Elder Imo heard Tongning's voice, he knew she had been crying. His heart softened. Are you okay? I'm fine. Tongning shook her head. Don't take the rumors to heart. Elder Imo is here to show you his stance. I hope you can have a child as soon as possible, but I'm not an old-fashioned man that doesn't know how to be flexible. In this lifetime, people can experience any kind of accident. I won't have a bad impression of you because of the outside world. I have eyes and I can see for myself. Do you understand? After hearing Elder Mo's words, Tongning's tears suddenly overflowed from her eyes. At this moment, her heart was filled with endless gratitude. Thank you, grandfather. Even if your body is damaged, you can still recuperate. It's not a big problem. It's just a small illness. You've endured so many hardships. Grandpa believes that you'll definitely be blessed by God. Our Imo family's luck won't be too bad. I know, grandfather. Tongning's voice was once again choked up. Okay, stop crying. If you continue to act like this, your husband will think that I'm bullying you. Have a good rest. I will keep an eye on the set for you. Elder Imo didn't like to drag things out, so he hung up the phone after speaking. After Tongning put down her phone, she looked at Ting with teary eyes. Did grandfather scold you? I hope he scolded me. Tongning sat up and gently hugged Ting. Grandfather is cheering me on. He wants me to do my best. Hubby, I really don't know how many lives of good fortune I have accumulated to be able to marry you and have such a good family. Ting gently patted her back as his originally furrowed eyebrows relaxed. He finally did something right. Tongning cried and laughed at the same time. In the end, she calmed down in Ting's arms. Not long after, Xia Yuling gave Tongning a phone call from Tangkor. Tongning, did you know that you scared me to death? The heartless media is causing trouble again. Originally, I wanted to step out and resolve it for you, but your fans have stepped out to speak up for you. Tongning was completely unaware of the public's reaction. I'm fine, Mom. I trust that Ting will take good care of you. You need to listen to him, Xia Yuling reminded. I know. Finally, there was also Hua Jingjing. Everyone that had anything to do with Tongning seemed to be genuinely concerned about how she was doing. Even Lin Chong, who had always been against her, started a new career after moving to the studio.